Chapter 23:17. Junior brother Xiao, are you hurt? Ming Mao asked with concern. I'm fine. Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out an elixir. He put it into his mouth without even looking at it. Then he said while gasping, I'm exhausted, and my magic power is also exhausted. I need to rest for a while. Then he looked at Jinhua and said angrily, Nephew Jin, why don't you come and support your uncle? Yes, I will go now. Jinhua stared blankly for a moment, then his face was filled with joy. He hurriedly flew over and firmly supported Xiao Hua. At this moment, the rest of the people came to themselves. The shock on their faces was replaced by respect. Then they heard a surprised voice. You are Xiao Hua, the disciple of the Imperial Thunder faction who lifted the divine object from the sky at the Feather Immortal gathering of the Taiqing sect? Yes, it must be you. Yes, it's Xiao Hua. I can't be wrong. Another cultivator also yelled with elation. I also participated in the Feather Immortal gathering, and I was stunned by fellow Taoist Zhao's divine power. Who would have thought that we would be reunited again after so many years? Fellow cultivator Zhao's divine power showed off again and saved us. Xiao Hua was stunned. He looked up and saw two surprised faces. Then he looked at their robes. One of them was from the Kunlun faction, and the other was from the Utopia faction. However, these two people's faces were unfamiliar to Xiao Hua. He couldn't remember them at all. After all, the Imperial Thunder faction wasn't in the same group as these two factions at the Feather Immortal gathering. Xiao Hua didn't fight with them in the second stage. Fellow cultivator Xiao, you were famous at the Feather Immortal gathering. The disciple of the Kunlun faction flew over and said while cupping his hands, I'm Kuxingxi from the Kunlun faction. Fellow cultivator Xiao, you don't remember me, but I have a deep impression of you. Back then, you made a name for yourself in one fell swoop. This is truly envious. I'm Yang Fangcheng from the Utopia faction. The disciple of the Utopia faction said while cupping his hands. Fellow cultivator Xiao, thank you for saving my life. Oh, you are from the Feather Immortal gathering. Xiao Hua thought to himself. Then, he weakly cupped his hands and laughed in a low and deep voice. So it's an old acquaintance of mine. What a coincidence! It wasn't a life-saving grace, it was just to save himself. Alas, it's actually a fluke. I'm just a paper tiger. If those giants and beast cultivators hadn't been scared away by me, I would have been in your care. Haha, junior brother Xiao has already done his best. He Fan Yuan also flew over and said with a smile. But with junior brother Zhao's killing of 3 beast cultivators, they already have no way to trap us. As long as we work together to fight them, we will definitely be able to escape. Next, He Fan Yuan cupped his fists and smiled at Kuxingxi and Yang Fangqing. Taiqing sect's He Fan Yuan greets the 2 senior brothers. Back then at the Feather Immortal Assembly, I had the chance to meet the 2 of you. Hello senior brother He. Kuxingxi and Yang Fangqing hurriedly returned the greeting. Back then, we parted ways at Taiqing sect's Hao domain. Senior brother He was the first Feather Immortal Assembly disciple to reach Foundation establishment. We have been envious of you for a long time. Hearing this, a trace of shame appeared on He Fan Yuan's face. He glanced at Xiao Hua and smiled. This foolish brother was lucky enough to be a step ahead in the Foundation establishment stage, but that is all in the future. Now look at the difference between me and junior brother Xiao, it is really 1,000 miles. Haha, senior brother He, you should compare yourself to us. Junior brother Xiao has the appearance of a celestial being. Ordinary people can't compare to him. Kuxingxi laughed loudly. These 3 people were Xiao Hua's old acquaintances. As soon as they met, they were very lively. First, they gathered around Xiao Hua. As they chatted and laughed, the people around them also gathered around. Their eyes were filled with envy as they looked at the 3 people. Another few cultivators flew up a few steps, cupped their hands, and said to Xiao Hua with a smile. This humbled Taoist, and the others thanked senior brother Xiao. Hearing their words, they clearly wanted to befriend him. But Xiao Hua's face was deathly pale. He waved his hand and weakly said, This Xiao, This Xiao is completely exhausted right now. I'm afraid I can't meet all of you. If there's anything you need, you should talk to my captain." After he finished speaking, Xiaohua closed his eyes and no longer paid attention to the crowd. Everyone saw this and did not dare to force him. They could not determine Xiaohua's cultivation level and strength, they only thought he was truly exhausted. They hurriedly and carefully flew towards Cui Hongshan and cupped their fists. Of course, Tai Ching's sect and Imperial Thunder sect came together. He Fan Yuan also brought Tai Ching's sect's disciples to greet the disciples of the other Dao sections. Sigh. Xiaohua closed his eyes and released his Buddhist sense. Seeing the sincerity and flattery of the many disciples, he could not help but sigh. Thinking of the pleasure of killing the bird cultivator just now, a kind of desire suddenly appeared in his heart. That kind of desire was the desire for freedom, the desire to soar into the sky. It was as if the Dao sect disciples here had become a burden to him, a burden that made it difficult for him to use his divine abilities. Even at this moment, Xiaohua felt that Imperial Thunder sect was his shackle. He did not have the freedom he had when he was a lone cultivator. At that time, although Xiaohua did not have a cultivation method, he could act recklessly and use all of his divine abilities without hesitation. But after arriving at the Imperial Thunder sect, although he had access to cultivation methods and medicinal pills, he had no choice but to conceal himself. He was afraid that if he revealed too much about himself, the master would discover something fishy about him. It is hard to live up to the reputation. Sometimes it is indeed like this. Xiaohua sighed, but then he laughed inwardly. If I did not enter Imperial Thunder sect, I would not have had so many fortuitous encounters. Even when I was chased by that old ghost Jingru, where could I have run to? Wouldn't I have been killed? This young master is being insatiable. But on this dawn-rain continent, there are giants. Back then, when Master said that I had the special bloodline of giants, he only said that there were giants in the Gui Sea. Even the Blood Ray Island disciple who claimed to have an ancient bloodline was not as tall as this giant. I just don't know if this giant can really find out about my origins? Xiaohua guessed inwardly. But thinking about the giant's silly appearance, Xiaohua shook his head vigorously in his heart. He did not want to have anything to do with them. After the group of cultivators exchanged greetings, they began to discuss their itinerary. The few team leaders whispered to each other, knowing that they were heading to Golden Spring Mountain for a mission. And this place was not far from Golden Spring Mountain. With so many cultivators gathered together, it was obviously not easy to conceal their whereabouts. If the location of Golden Spring Mountain was exposed, not only would it be disadvantageous to the Spirit Stone mine, it would also be detrimental to their own safety. Therefore, the few team leaders discussed for a while and decided to use the old method, which was to split up and enter Golden Spring Mountain from different directions. Of course, since these few teams had already gathered here, the few team leaders naturally had to exchange messaging charms. They even agreed on the distance between each other to prevent the situation of being surrounded by the bird cultivators and giants again. At this moment, Cui Hongshan's messaging charms were snatched away by the other team leaders. Obviously, they had placed all their hopes on Xiaohua. After the arrangements were made, everyone cupped their hands and released their divine senses. Then, according to the plan just now, they each chose a route and flew up. Let's go! Cui Hongshan saw that everyone had left, and waved his hand. Yes! Jin Mingwei and the others replied in a low voice, but they did not get up. However, Dui Qiming said in a low voice, Xiaohua's body has not recovered. I'm afraid it's not suitable for him to move now. In my opinion, it's better for him to rest for a while. Cui Hongshan had considered this. But the other apprentices of the Kunlun sect and the Utopia faction all wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Cui Hongshan also felt a little nervous. He wanted to take Xiao Huafei with him for a while before stopping to rest. It's better for us to leave first. Cui Hongshan thought for a while and said, The beast cultivator and the giant have just been defeated here. Who knows, they might come back. Xiaohua was very brave just now. I'm afraid he won't be able to fight now. If we stay here, we'll be the prey of the beast cultivator and the giant. It's really unwise. Moreover, the 10 people of my Imperial Thunder Sect's first small team are still here. I want to quickly bring you all into Golden Spring Mountain. This way, I can be at ease. Chui Hongshan's words were very selfless. If others heard it, they would definitely feel that he didn't care about his own junior brother's injury, and only cared about everyone's life and death. Xiao Hua could naturally hear it. He was slightly angry in his heart, and secretly said, "If it wasn't for me, I'm afraid your wish would have been strangled to death by the sword cultivator." But after thinking for a while, wasn't this also his own wish? Moreover, if the beast cultivator was really at a loss and the group of people came back, should he attack or not? Forget it. Xiao Hua sighed, opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "I'm fine. I'll listen to fellow Chui. Let Xinhua support me at the end." "Okay." Dui Qiming nodded. She knew that the soul of the entire small team was Xiao Hua. If he really wanted to rest, then he must rest. Chui Hongshan and Jin Minghui's hearts were no longer at a loss. They looked at each other, and Jin Minghui said with a smile, "I'll lead the way. Captain Chui will bring up the rear." "And that's fine too." Chui Hongshan slightly hesitated before agreeing. After waiting for everyone to fly, Xiao Hua also flew up with Jinhua. Chui Hongshan urged his magic power and flew behind Xiao Hua. "Fellow Chui, let me ask you a question." Xiao Hua didn't turn his head and asked in a low voice. "Speak less," Chui Hongshan said coldly. "Master always said that you have a lot of questions and don't do proper work." "Sure enough, it's true. Last time, you used a magic treasure and a Dharma body to deal with the sword cultivator. This time, you actually used some divine artifact. Don't you think you have too many tricks up your sleeves? Why do you have the same tone as Master?" Xiao Hua sneered. "If I didn't use the wishful rod, do you think those giants would be scared away?" "Oh? Wishful rod? That's a good name." Chui Hongshan nodded and said, "Is that the thing you obtained at the Feather Immortal Assembly?" -8. Chapter 23:18. Yes or no? Do I need to tell you? Xiao Hua replied snappily. "You haven't answered my question yet." However, Xiao Hua's heart was also happy. Wishful Staff, this name was really easy to come up with. It was a gift from the heavens. He didn't say it out loud, but it actually sounded good. "Humph, you haven't said what the question is. How can I answer?" Chui Hongshan replied bluntly. "Pfft." It was none other than Jinhua, who couldn't help but laugh. I'm scared," Jinhua whispered. "I'm scared that the giant will come again." "Humph, you're that scared? Why don't you show me how scared you are? If you're scared and don't come out, I'll drag you to the giant 20 miles away," Xiao Hua scolded. "You're so young and you haven't learned anything. You only know how to lie." Yes, Jinhua said in panic. "I was wrong. Uncle Xiao, don't be angry." "TSK, why are you venting your anger on a child?" Chui Hongshan couldn't figure out whether Xiao Hua was scolding him or not. He could only reply, "How do you know there's a giant 20 miles away? I remember Master said that you used the jade Kirin fruit to stimulate your divine sense. There's no reason for your divine sense to be farther than mine. Why should I tell you the reason? I'm lying, okay?" Xiao Hua rolled his eyes. "You haven't answered my question yet." "What's the question?" Chui Hongshan was a little anxious. "Those disciples of the Extreme Happiness faction, Kunlun sect, Immortal Ascension sect, and Blue Li sect. How will they be dealt with?" Xiao Hua asked in a low voice. "This?" Chui Hongshan glanced at Jinhua and said, "If we weren't there, they ran away. As long as the disciples of the four sects don't investigate, who will know? But these 10 people ran away in front of us. The disciples of the four sects didn't dare to cover it up. They could only report it directly. Otherwise, they would also be punished. The fate of these 10 disciples was already decided the moment they ran away. They're bound to die." The four sects absolutely can't tolerate them running away when they're fighting. Especially with the reinforcements of the Imperial Thunder sect and Tai Ching sect. I understand. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a trace of sternness. These people really deserve to die. Did they not think about it? We risked our lives to come here, yet they actually hardened their hearts and fled? Alas, the test of life and death is too great. Cui Hongshan sighed. Even I am a little hesitant, let alone them. Although the captains of the four sects didn't say anything, it seems that they will only report this matter to the higher-ups and won't take any other measures. If those disciples manage to escape alive, they can only become rogue cultivators and face the joint pursuit of the 3 cultivation kingdoms. Xiao Hua nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Cui Hongshan also flew up carefully. From time to time, he would vigilantly release his spiritual force to prevent the bird cultivator from attacking again. Fellow Taoist Cui, you don't need to be so careful. The beast cultivator and giant have long been scared out of their wits. They won't chase after you. Xiao Hua couldn't help but remind Cui Hongshan when he saw how cautious he was. Better safe than sorry. Cui Hongshan laughed coldly. However, it was clear that he had relaxed after this. He only flew slowly and did not extend his consciousness too far. It was a pity. Although Xiao Hua's Buddhist awareness was powerful, he was still careless. Just as they flew away for less than a cigarette, the dwarf who had chased after them once again emerged from the place where he had killed the bird cultivator. The dwarf sucked in a breath of cold air. The small head that had just emerged immediately shrank back. It wasn't until a long time later that he tremblingly revealed his small nose. He vigorously sniffed a few times before revealing half of his body again. He looked left and right. Looking at his appearance, he was afraid that if there was even the slightest sign of trouble, he would escape into the ground and escape. However, apart from the sound of the wind, the snow, and the smell of blood that lingered for a long time, there really wasn't any other danger. The dwarf finally jumped out of the ground and carefully looked around. He sniffed again and looked in the direction that Xiao Hua and the others had flown in. His face was full of panic and hesitation. Finally, the dwarf decisively turned around and escaped into the ground, heading into the distance. In the end, this cowardly dwarf did not dare to continue to chase down. Quanjin Mountain was not far away. However, after flying for half a day, a huge mountain range could be seen in front of them. This mountain range was not tall, but it was extremely large and covered an extremely wide area. The mountain range was covered in ice for thousands of miles. It was as smooth as a mirror, and there were no spirit grasses or spirit trees to be seen. Apart from cultivators, there were absolutely no other signs of human habitation. Even birds that spread their wings and flew would not come here. This is Quanjin Mountain? Xiao Hua's eyes shone brightly as he looked at the endless mountain range in the distance. He unconsciously frowned. This situation, apart from the ice and snow, was not much different from Qishu Mountain Range. Even that cold place was extremely similar. Let's go! Cui Hongshan did not say anything else. He directly flew to the front and took out the team leader's token. He carefully looked at it, and raised his head to look again. He waved his hand and flew towards a certain place in the mountain range. Xiao Hua's Buddhist awareness also saw that far away in the mountain range, Tai Ching sect's disciples were also flying up under He Fan Yuan's lead. It seemed that their direction was not the same as Imperial Thunder sects. Sure enough, Cui Hongshan brought Xiao Hua and the others to another place in the mountain range. When they reached the mountain range, Xiao Hua looked around. This was actually a continuous stretch of green pine forest. Those green pine trees were over 100 feet tall. The crisp pine needles were condensed into a layer of sparkling ice, swaying in the breeze. Occasionally, there would be pine branches that could not withstand the pressure of the snow falling down, making a silent sound. The place where they landed, apart from a thick layer of snow, there were also some rotten withered branches. How could one tell that this was a spirit stone mine? Xiao Hua naturally understood that this was definitely a concealment formation. However, He released his divine sense and looked for a long time but did not see any clues. He unconsciously shook his head. Sigh, there are indeed many experts in this world. This young master's formation skills can be considered to have some accomplishments, but I can't even see a little bit of it. Flying down from the mountain range, Cui Hongshan activated his magic power. The captain's token emitted a faint brilliance, and a fist-sized brilliance flew out from the token. Then, it transformed into a sparrow-shaped bird. It flapped its wings and flew into the depths of the mountain forest. Everyone did not say anything. They all followed the little bird and gradually went deeper into the forest. That light was also strange. It did not fly high at all. It only flew slowly between the pine trees that were not too dense, like a fluttering butterfly. After flying for a little more than half a day, that light stopped. It suddenly flew several feet and disappeared into a pine tree that was only the size of a person. -8. Chapter 23:19. Huh! Is it here? Xiao Hua was not in a hurry. He looked at the pine tree and used his divine sense to scan the surroundings. Jin Mingwei and the others were also puzzled. It seemed that there was no fluctuation of magic power in the surroundings. When Xiao Hua and the others saw Cui Hongshan's movements, they suddenly realized. Cui Hongshan walked to the pine tree and gestured up and down. His body flew up about 2 jang and extended a finger, pointing at an inconspicuous spot on the tree. However, there was no movement from him at all. But Cui Hongshan was not surprised. His body landed again. This time, he actually lowered his body and pointed at the spot opposite the tree 3 inches from the ground. Then, he left the pine tree again and waited quietly for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Then, he flew up again and pointed at the tree spots high up. After Cui Hongshan pointed at it 3 times, he flew to the side of the pine tree again. This was different again. It was actually 3 tree spots in a triangular shape. There was nothing special at all. Cui Hongshan pointed 4 times. When Cui Hongshan flew to another place, Xiao Hua simply stopped looking. Needless to say, there was some mechanism on the pine tree. It was not set up by magic. What was the use of looking at such a complicated method? But the strange thing was, when Xiao Hua released his divine sense and carefully looked under the pine tree, where was there any trace of magic? There wasn't even a single passageway or mechanism. Damn, this is really interesting. Xiao Hua smiled and released his Buddhist sense. His Buddhist sense was still the best. Xiao Hua finally found a trace of abnormality. But before he could take a closer look, Cui Hongshan smiled and said, "All right, let's go in." After speaking, Cui Hongshan's figure floated and entered first. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that about 2 jang above the pine tree, there was a hole the size of a person. It was like the pine tree's eye, looking at him with ridicule. Okay, Xiao Hua did not look anymore. He withdrew his Buddhist sense and followed everyone into the hole. The inside of the tree hole was extremely dark. When his divine sense swept, the inner wall of the tree actually blocked everyone's divine sense. I'm afraid this isn't some ordinary pine tree. Xiao Hua had already understood that if it wasn't a strange spiritual wood, it wouldn't be able to block his spiritual sense. Cui Hongshan led the way in front and kept flying downwards. After flying for thousands of feet, or even thousands of feet, a misty brilliance appeared in front of their eyes. It was the light of the bright flower stone. At this time, the space gradually became bigger. The entire downward passage was actually an inverted loophole. Oh my God, this is incredible! Xiao Hua's divine sense slightly swept out. He was just as curious as everyone else. He couldn't help but secretly sigh in his heart. This spirit stone vein is really a secret. It's so deep underground that it's thousands of feet deep. Whose divine sense would be so bored to check under this desolate pine forest? It's no wonder the sword cultivators didn't notice it even though it was so close to Hun country. Who are you? An indescribably cold voice suddenly emerged from beneath Cui Hongshan's feet. Cui Hongshan immediately stopped descending and looked towards the direction of the voice. He saw that on the stone wall of the tunnel, there was a cave that was half the height of a person. A cultivator dressed in pitch-black clothes was sitting cross-legged there, and asked him without raising his head. I'm Chui Hongshan, the captain of the Imperial Thunder Sect's first team. I'm leading my team of 10 people to Mount Quanjin to support the fellow cultivators from Sky Patrol City. Chui Hongshan saw that it was a cultivator in the middle stage of Foundation establishment. He didn't dare to hastily report his name, and took out the captain's token. Oh, so it's a fellow cultivator from the Imperial Thunder Sect? That cultivator raised his head. His entire face was covered by a cloak. He stretched out his hand and said, I'm a disciple of Mount Quanjin's Sky Patrol City. I thank the Imperial Thunder Sect for coming to help. In addition, since fellow cultivator Chui can come here, there must be a guide. However, there are rules. Captain Chui, please take out the token and check it. Of course, please. Chui Hongshan handed over the token, and the cultivator took it. He took out a magic weapon that looked like a ruler from his arms. He urged his spiritual power and placed it on the token. A yellow light flashed on the ruler, and it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then, a thumb-sized ball flew out from the ruler. It paused for a moment, and then flew into Chui Hongshan's token. I, Mount Quanjin's imprint, have entered Captain Chui's token. When this matter is over, Captain Chui can use this imprint to return to Sky Patrol City. Sky Patrol City has nothing but gratitude. The cultivator clapped his hand and the token fell into Chui Hongshan's hand again. Captain Chui, please continue forward. According to the other disciples of Sky Patrol City, your Imperial Thunder Sect's other teams have arrived. The resting room of your Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples is arranged in the northwest area. You can go there with the disciples who welcome you. As for how to defend, how to guard, and how to fight, we'll have to wait for all the disciples to arrive before we can decide. Yes, I understand. Chui Hongshan took the token and kept it in his arms. He cupped his hands and flew down. Xiao Hua and the others followed closely behind him. Hee, such a mysterious arrangement, and such a deep tunnel. I'm afraid it's not easy to be discovered by a sword cultivator, right? As long as we guard on time, we should be able to complete the task. Facing the enemy is nonsense. Xiao Hua laughed in his heart. He believed in his own vision. Even his Buddhist consciousness could not find the underground mineral vein. How could a sword cultivator know? This time, his first team had drawn a good lot. They would definitely not encounter such a dangerous situation like last time. After flying for another 100 feet, everyone's eyes were bright. They had reached the end of the tunnel. This was a space with a radius of several 100 feet. In this space, there were dozens of disciples in Sky Patrol City's City Guard uniform. They held celestial devices and other items and were on guard. Before Xiao Hua and the others landed, the disciples' divine senses locked onto Xiao Hua and the others. When they saw the faces and robes of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples, they relaxed slightly. They also wanted to check the tokens. Xiao Hua took advantage of this time to look around. He saw that other than the tunnel where he and the others landed, there were 4 to 5 pitch-black holes above the space. It should be a tunnel that led to here from another direction. Sorry, everyone's tokens also need to be checked. After checking Chui Hongshan's captain token, another 9 city guards stepped forward and politely stretched out their hands. Sigh, it's really troublesome. Dui Ling muttered softly. I'll let this fellow from the Imperial Thunder Sect know. The city guard in front of Dui Ling laughed and said, My Quanjin Mountain is a spirit stone mineral vein. It's not only extremely important to my Sky Patrol City, it's also crucial to the entire war. No matter how careful you are, you can't be too careful. I was just saying. Dui Ling laughed and took out the token. Xiao Hua also took out the token cooperatively and handed it to the city guard. At the same time, he smiled and said, Just now, I saw Tai Ching Sect's captain here arrive first. I wonder where they are arranged. Oh? Tai Ching Sect? The city guard checked the token and laughed. I have been on duty this entire time and have not seen any Tai Ching Sect disciples. However, a small team from the Rock Border Sect came in earlier. Oh? Xiaohua raised his brows and said curiously. Fan Yuan is right in front of us. Could it be that Quanjin Mountain has multiple entrances? Fellow Taoist Xiao will be on duty in a few days, so I won't hide it from fellow Taoist. My Golden Spring Mountain has 8 such entrances, and each entrance has 4 to 6 tunnels that lead to the surface. Does your fellow Taoists from the Tai Ching sect know where they came from? However, the Tai Ching sect disciples seem to be arranged in the northwest region. You just have to go in and look for them. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua received the token and nodded in reply. After everyone's tokens were checked, a Qi refinement disciple walked over and respectfully led the way in front, bringing them to the northwest region to rest. Walking out of the space of the entrance, Xiaohua felt his vision suddenly become clear. The first thing he looked at was the top of his head. He saw that although there were no gloomy winter clouds above his head, nor was there any blue sky or white clouds, there was a layer of faint azure. There was a layer of fine light emitting from it, and it did not seem like a cave 10,000 feet below. Moreover, this azure sky above his head was extremely high. It seemed to be several hundred feet high, and there was no feeling of oppression. Xiaohua moved his gaze away from the top of his head and looked in front of him. It was another huge space. This space was not too flat, and there were some ravines and hills. It was somewhat similar to the mountains commonly seen in the country of Xi. What surprised Xiaohua the most was that above these ravines and hills, there were some green and bright colors. It was the color of Xiao Chao and Xiaohua. It was really more lively than the spring gold mountain pine forest above his head. Looking at the space again, there were already many cultivators. Most of these cultivators were disciples of the Sky Patrol City, and most of these disciples were Qi refinement disciples. There were very few disciples above the Foundation establishment realm. Some of these disciples were in a hurry, flying in the space from a cave on one side of the space to another place. Some disciples seemed to be a little slow, or even slightly limited. As for the Foundation establishment disciples of the Sky Patrol City, they should be the disciples on duty, leading some Qi refinement disciples and cruising at the edge of the space. My goodness, is this the Spirit Stone vein? Xiaohua didn't dare to extend his divine sense too far, and only swept it to the left. The rich and familiar Earth-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth filled the entire space. Taking a deep breath, he was able to feel the coolness of the spiritual energy in the air. It seems, this task is not as difficult as I thought. Xiaohua thought again. Even if I am on duty here, I can still cultivate during normal times. In this place where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth is rich, my cultivation will definitely improve faster. This young master needs a lot of spiritual qi of heaven and earth for cultivation. I'm afraid this spiritual qi is useless. -8. Chapter 23:20. Thinking about it, Xiaohua could not help but feel a little regretful. He looked to the side of the space and saw the cave closest to him. It must be the entrance to the Spirit Stone vein. Thinking about the piles of spirit stones inside, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. It was a pity that the Sky Patrol City disciple who led Xiaohua and the others walked in front. Otherwise, Xiaohua would have gone forward to ask about the Spirit Stone vein. The arrival of Xiaohua and the others did not attract the attention of the Sky Patrol City disciples. It seemed that the number of Path Sect disciples had increased during this period of time. Just as the Sky Patrol City's disciple was about to lead Xiaohua and the others into a large cave, a loud noise came from a cave not far away from Xiaohua. Many of the disciples who were flying into the cave stopped and gave way to the noise. Then, a group of Sky Patrol City disciples who were only at level 3 or 4 of the Qi refining realm flew out of the cave. These disciples lined up neatly in rows of 5. Under the leadership of a 10th layer Qi refining disciple, they filed out of the cave. Xiaohua paused for a moment, and watched like Cui Hongshan and the others. He waited until this group of disciples had completely flown out of the cave, and into another cave before flying up again. Xiaohua saw clearly that there were more than 1,000 disciples in this group. Each disciple had a bulging storage bag on their waist. Moreover, these disciples' faces were full of fatigue, as if they were extremely tired. I'll let you know. These are the disciples of our Sky Patrol City who are mining here." When the Chi Refinement disciples saw that the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples had stopped, he did not urge them. He waited for them to fly up again before he introduced them with a smile. "Half of the disciples recruited by the Sky Patrol City have to mine in the Spirit Stone veins. Only when they have accumulated enough Spirit Stones can they officially become the official disciples of the Sky Patrol City. These disciples have to hand over the ores they mine to the warehouse. When the warehouse is full of Spirit Stones, the general will bring them back to the Sky Patrol City and hand them over to the city governor." "General?" Xiao Hua was stunned. Sure enough, Cui Hongxun was also puzzled and asked in a low voice. "General is Senior Tu Hong, right?" Yes." The Qi Refining Realm disciple nodded and said, "Senior Tu is a Golden Core Realm senior. He has been in charge of the Spirit Stone vein in Mount Springgold for hundreds of years. The title of General is a title of honor in Sky Patrol City. My Golden Spring Mountains disciples all address Senior Tu as such. This junior is also used to it." As they spoke, Xiao Hua and the others entered the cave. This cave was also huge. Just like the previous space, there were some flowers and plants. After flying for another incense stick's worth of time, the number of Sky Patrol City's disciples decreased. It was also much quieter. The Chi Refinement disciple said in a low voice, "This is the place where the high-ranking disciples of the Sky Patrol City rest and cultivate. It's usually quieter here. Due to the arrival of the seniors, the general has moved the disciples here to another place. The heaven and earth spirit chi here is denser than anywhere else. I hope you'll be satisfied. Many thanks for Senior Tu's arrangement." Shui Hongxun replied with a smile. When a huge stone wall appeared in front of them with numerous caves on it, the Chi Refinement disciple clapped his hands and took out a jade amulet. He handed it to Cui Hongxun with both hands and said, "Inside each cave are 10 quiet rooms, all of which can be used for cultivation. Captain Cui and the other seniors, please rest for a while. After a few days, when all the seniors who came as reinforcements arrive, the general will definitely receive you all." "All right. Many thanks." Cui Hongxun took the jade amulet. "Also, if there's nothing else, please stay in this quiet room. If you feel bored, you can walk around outside the quiet room. However, please do not fly out of the cave outside." The Chi Refinement disciple smiled apologetically and reminded, "Our Sky Patrol City has set up many powerful restrictions here. Many of them are so powerful that even the general does not dare to touch them casually. If any of the seniors were to walk into the wrong place, I'm afraid the consequences would be very serious." We understand." Cui Hongxun smiled and cupped his hands. After the Chi Refinement disciple bowed, he turned around and flew away. I thought it would be an extremely dangerous mission." Jin Minghui and Xiao Hua had the same thought. After the disciple left, Jin Minghui chuckled and said, "So it's so carefree. It's the same as when I was patrolling the Thunder Palace in the past. The heaven and earth spirit chi here is so dense, it seems to be even better than the Thunder Palace. This mission is really too easy." I'm afraid so." Cui Hongxun injected his dermic powers into the jade amulet. The jade amulet turned into a stream and rushed into one of the caves. After breaking the restriction outside the cave, he smiled and said, "The spiritual stone veins in Mount Quanjin are buried so deep. I'm afraid that the Sky Patrol City has set up this place for thousands of years. Even if a sword cultivator were to fly over it, it would be impossible for them to know about it, not to mention that they would not even think of this place. As long as the disciples who come to Mount Quanjin are more cautious and not let the sword cultivator's eyes and ears find them, we will have nothing to worry about." Dui Qiming nodded. "What about the dozens of disciples who escaped?" Xiao Hua reminded. "If they were captured by the sword cultivator, they might have been forced to confess or have their souls searched." This? Cui Hongxun's expression changed slightly. He frowned and said, I'm afraid it's not good to ask. This is a shameful matter between the Utopia faction and Kunlun sect. It's not good for me to mention it. I just hope that they don't know about Mount Quan Jin, or that they were killed by the sword cultivator once they saw him. Let's go! Xiaohua was the first to enter the cave. He smiled and said, If the sky falls, there are tall people to hold it up. Senior 2 is a golden core cultivator. With him around, we don't have to worry. Inside the cave, there were indeed 10 quiet rooms. Xiaohua and the others each found one. Shui Hongshan and Jin Minghui discussed together. Dui Qiming and Ming Mao chatted together. Xiaohua was the first to activate the restriction of the quiet room. Without waiting to sit cross-legged, he took out the wishful rod. The scene of killing the bird cultivator really shocked him. Along the way, he wanted to take it out and take a look. Xiaohua was a little frustrated and scratched his head. Grow! Xiaohua looked at the wishful rod that was less than 2 feet long and shouted in a low voice. With a whoosh, Xiaohua's hand moved slightly, as if his arm had stretched out. The wishful rod indeed stretched out less than half a foot long. Ha ha! Xiaohua laughed. He reached out and touched his nose. He shouted again. Grow! Whoosh! The wishful rod once again grew half a foot long. Grow, grow! After Xiaohua called out twice, he shut his mouth. The wishful steel rod grew again, reaching a total of 3 feet before stopping. Xiaohua's hand also felt that it had stretched to the end, and could no longer stretch any further. In the records of ghost cultivators, the wishful rod of the 5 elements can pierce the 9 heavens and explore the 9 underworlds. How can this wishful rod only reach 3 feet? Xiaohua said. -8. Chapter 23-21. Then Xiaohua secretly laughed. Damn, this is already good. I still don't know how to refine the 5 elements wishful heaven staff. I can get such a prototype. With this thing, I will try my best to find the refining method and the materials used. As long as the opportunity is right, I will be able to refine the 5 elements wishful heaven staff sooner or later. Alas, I am afraid I will not see the great wisdom heavy sword in the future. This guy seems to have accompanied me for a long time. Xiaohua played with the wishful heaven staff technique in the quiet room and shrunk the wishful heaven staff. Similarly, he could only shrink it to about 1 foot and could not shrink it anymore. After putting the wishful heaven staff into the space, Xiaohua looked at the duckling. After these days of recuperation, the duckling was obviously out of danger, just like Goldie. However, her recovery was also very slow, and she still had not woken up. Alas, this space is a bit strange. I don't know how many years these eggs have been here, but why haven't there been any changes? Why can't anything hatch? Xiaohua swept his gaze over those insect eggs again. He actually had the intention to take these insect eggs into his spirit storage pouch, but then he had another thought. In any case, I have no use for these things. I want to see what exactly is stopping these insect eggs from hatching. Immediately after, Xiaohua took out the items from the 30 sword cultivators, as well as the 3 storage pouches from the bird cultivators. The sword cultivators' storage pouches were mostly filled with sword slips, spirit stones, and unknown medicinal pills. The bird cultivators' storage pouches had even more spirit stones, as well as some sword slips and medicinal pills. However, the bird cultivators' medicinal pills were very strange. They were as big as chicken eggs and incomparably smelly. Xiaohua sniffled and hastily put away these medicinal pills, and only then did he carefully look through the sword slips. After looking at them for a long time, Xiaohua was disappointed again. These sword slips didn't contain any primordial spirit sword controlling techniques, and they were only ordinary sword techniques for sword cultivators. Huh! This storage bag is a bit strange. When he picked up the last storage bag, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. The storage bag's space was very large, and there was a faint sword light flowing inside. It seemed that the sword light could fly out. Moreover, in this storage bag, there was only a sword slip and a palm-sized purple redwood. There was nothing else. That's strange. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then raised the storage pouch and looked around. After thinking hard for a moment, he somewhat understood. This storage pouch seemed to have been taken from the sword cultivator's bosom when he killed that sword cultivator who could resist the soul-absorbing bell. I'm afraid he has some background, Xiaohua thought and took out the sword slip. When he finished reading the contents, he was even more puzzled. Spirit-swallowing bug? Wasn't this the second spiritual insect recorded in the insect scripture? Huan country actually has it. Was this wood the black silk wood? A spiritual object that can attract and find spirit-swallowing bugs? Xiaohua clapped his hand, and the purple-red black silk wood fell into his hand. Instantly, an extremely fragrant and sweet smell emanated from the black silk wood, and it instantly filled the entire room. That sweet fragrance entered Xiaohua's nose and mouth, and a feeling of laziness emerged in his mind. The soul thread in the mysterious dark cloud suddenly jumped, as if it had taken some elixir to refresh its mind. It jumped violently, and a powerful fluctuation spread out from within the dark cloud. My goodness, this is... Xiaohua was stunned at first, and then he was overjoyed. This was obviously something used by the soul cultivation method. Without the slightest hesitation, Xiaohua released his soul strands, which wrapped around the entire black silk wood. When the black silk wood entered the dark clouds with the soul strands, Xiaohua clearly sensed that the rich fragrance of the black silk wood filled the entire sky. His strand of primordial spirit happily flew along with the fluctuations in the sky. As it flew, his primordial spirit visibly grew stronger, and slowly rose higher. Wonderful! Xiaohua withdrew his primordial spirit, and was really happy. Needless to say, sword cultivators and soul cultivators had fought for so long, so they must have a lot of things used by soul cultivators. Xiaohua wanted to improve his soul cultivation, so killing sword cultivators was a shortcut. The Chestnut Valley recorded in the sword slip must be the place where the spirit-swallowing bugs are. If I have time, I can go there and see if I can get the larvae of the spirit-swallowing bugs. If I don't have time, then I'd better not go. Spirit-swallowing bugs, just thinking about it is horrifying. Xiaohua now had a lot of spirit insects in the space, but they had not hatched. He even had the eggs of the mirage butterfly, which ranked first, so he really did not care about the spirit-swallowing bugs. Well, this storage bag is probably the spirit storage bag of a sword cultivator. Xiaohua realized something and threw the storage bag into the space. Then, he erased the primordial spirits of all the flying swords and put them into another storage bag. The quality of these flying swords was ordinary, not as good as the previous green sword. Xiaohua did not care about them. He would wait until he returned to the Sky Patrol City, and exchange them for spirit stones and other things. Then, Xiaohua took out the sword slip of the bird cultivator. The 3 sword slips of the bird cultivator recorded the same thing. In addition to the method of integrating the spirit birds into the body, there was also the elixir formula for the bird cultivator to take. Xiaohua just looked at the method of integrating the spirit birds into the body and then focused on the elixir formula. The elixir formula of the bird cultivator was very different from the elixir formula of the Taoist sect. It did not use spiritual herbs to refine the elixir, but the inner core of spirit beasts and the flesh of spirit beasts. It was somewhat similar to the elixir formula of the legendary Feng He Si. No wonder it smells a little. Xiaohua frowned and finished reading the elixir formula. He thought to himself, the inner core of the spirit beasts is used as the main ingredient, and the flesh and scales are used as supplements. It should be another refining method. Although it looks very bloody, it is also wonderful. I have not seen the elixir formula of the Feng He Si. I'm afraid it is a kind of moderate method, with inner core and spiritual herbs. However, the inner core of the beast cultivator can not only improve the cultivation, but also strengthen the body according to their secret method. It is also useful. It's this stench. I have to think about how to get rid of it. Otherwise, how can I take it? Xiaohua thought and carefully read the elixir formula several times. He remembered it in his heart and put it into the space. The spiritual stone vein, Xiao Hua counted his gains and looked around the quiet room. He thought to himself, "It has been so long since I got the refining method of the talisman from Tianmen Mountain. My primordial spirit has already understood the most basic refining method. Unfortunately, I have not had the chance to find the jade essence. Now that I am in the spiritual stone vein, I should be able to find some to practice?" This was what Xiao Hua wanted the most when he came to the spiritual stone vein in Jinquan Mountain. However, since the jade essence was such a precious thing, Xiao Hua would not be able to get it easily. Moreover, the spiritual stone vein in Jinquan Mountain was extremely precious to the Sky Patrol City. Although the disciples of the Taoist sect came to help, they were probably patrolling. It was almost impossible for them to go deep into the jade stone vein. "Looks like I have to think of something." Xiao Hua scratched his chin and thought to himself. Just as he swallowed a few cyan spirit pills and was about to activate his cultivation method to cultivate, he suddenly jumped up again. His face revealed a pleasantly surprised expression as he muttered, You see, with so many things, it's really easy for people to overlook." "That's what I said. How can this beast cultivation method be useless? Isn't this thing a copy of the puppet technique?" Of course, after Xiao Hua obtained the upper part of the puppet technique from Emoqing Yuan, he had already comprehended it thoroughly. He already knew the basic puppet repair technique, and even knew the material of the puppet. However, these were all the basics. Relying on these alone was far from enough to refine a puppet, let alone a high-level puppet, or even a puppet with sentience. When Xiao Hua saw the bird cultivator's cultivation method, he suddenly realized something. Wasn't this kind of cultivation method that fused spirit birds with the body essentially the refining method of sentient puppets? Was this the puppet technique that used the body as the puppet and the spiritual beast as the primordial spirit? Moreover, Xiao Hua already knew the weapon refining technique. Using the 5 elements weapon refining technique to refine a puppet, and then using the beast cultivation secret technique. Would he be able to refine a sentient puppet soon? Comprehending by analogy, my old friend is not deceiving me. Xiao Hua was more aware of the importance of having a wide range of knowledge than now. Emoqing Yuan, this bastard actually used the lower part of the puppet technique as bait to make this young master go find him. Isn't he at the extreme north of the Dawn Rain continent with the Huan country? His so-called puppet sect is probably just some cultivation method and secret technique that he obtained from the beast cultivation method, and then used it to suit the Dao sect's cultivators. This young master has also found the trick now, so who would pay attention to him? Xiao Hua thought to himself. If this place was the weapon refining technique, or if Xiao Hua had the materials to refine a puppet, he would definitely ignite the earth fire and other materials without hesitation to practice the inspiration he had just now. Unfortunately, this was a quiet room, and the materials to refine a puppet were also difficult to find. Xiao Hua could only understand all the details and forcefully suppress his excitement. Only then did he sit down cross-legged, consume the azure spirit pill, and use the immortal body bestowment technique. He did his best to absorb the rich earth spirit chi of heaven and earth, and even refined the earth crystal yao milk in his meridians. Gradually, he entered the ethereal realm. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed, and no one came to disturb Xiao Hua's cultivation. Naturally, Xiao Hua was also happy to be free. However, no one disturbed Xiao Hua, but that didn't mean that there was nothing. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, the disciples of Jishan Quanshan came to look for the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. They said that all the Dao Sect's disciples who came to support had arrived, and Tu Hong invited the representatives of the various sects to meet them. Because there were too many disciples who came to support this time, no matter how many small teams came or how many people came, each sect only invited 3 disciples to be their representatives. Only Cui Hongshan's first small team from the Imperial Thunder Sect came to Jinshan Quanshan, so they didn't have to worry about which small team's disciples or leaders to go. They only needed to send 3 people. Cui Hongshan and Jin Minghui were naturally the 2 candidates, and according to Jin Minghui's thoughts, the third must be Xiao Hua. Hearing Jin Minghui's suggestion, Chui Hongshan immediately rejected it. -8. Chapter 23-22. No one understood Xiaohua better than Chui Hongshan. Xiaohua was the kind of person who was too lazy to entertain others. He would rather hide at the side and cultivate than to make friends with other cultivators. Since Chui Hongshan objected, Jin Minghui did not say anything more. Other than Xiaohua, the most suitable candidate was Diu Aiqiming. Firstly, she was a female cultivator. Secondly, she was a disciple of Lightning Palace. She would follow Chui Hongshan and Jin Minghui and would be the representative of Lightning Palace in the first team. Thus, Chui Hongshan and the rest did not inform Xiaohua and followed the disciple of Golden Spring Mountain to Tu Hong's reception area. Tu Hong was a Jindan stage cultivator, and he was also one of the warlords of the Golden Spring Mountain. Even though it wasn't as majestic as a sex guest hall, it was still far from what an ordinary cultivator's guest hall could compare with. This was an oval-shaped space that was a few hundred feet in size. There were thick yellow pillars that even a few cultivators would not be able to hug all of them. The pillars were engraved with complicated runes that were connected to the runes on the ground and ceiling of the space. There was a faint fluctuation of magic power. However, if one used their divine sense to scan it, they would not be able to find any trace of it. The pillars were extremely tall, at least 100 feet. The top of the pillars was similarly blue in color, like the clear blue sky. The white clouds in the blue sky were connected to each other. This was the complicated runes. In the gaps of the runes, there were hundreds and thousands of bright flower stones embedded in them, illuminating the entire space. It was no different from the clear sky. Below the walls of the space and on the ground, there were huge spiritual grasses or extremely tall spiritual trees planted from time to time. The fragrance of the spiritual grasses and the branches and leaves of the spiritual trees swayed in the wind. At first glance, no one would think that the space was underground. Chui Hongshan was also from a cultivator family and was quite knowledgeable. Following the disciple of Golden Spring Mountain into the reception area, he did not use his divine sense to scan the place. Instead, he used his eyes to think about the ravines and plants outside. He knew that General Tu Hong, who he had only heard of and had never met before, was a senior with good taste, who knew how to enjoy life, and even had some elegance. Hongshan, this reception area is so big. It should be able to accommodate all the disciples, right? Why is there a need to send only 3 people each? Diu Aiqiming's eyes shifted as she transmitted a message in a low voice. Chui Hongshan had long noticed that some disciples from other sects had already arrived. They were standing right in front of the hall, and in front of them was a jade table that was half the height of a person. On top of the table was a square vessel with more than a dozen token arrows inserted into it. Behind the table was a jade chair. Chui Hongshan narrowed his eyes and transmitted his voice. Senior Tu Hong is a gold core cultivator, and we are merely juniors. There are even chi refining disciples among the disciples who came as reinforcements. How can he meet us one by one? This method of meeting the leaders of the various sects is precisely Senior's choice. Following which, he said with admiration, this Chui really wants to see what this general of Quanjin Mountain's disciple looks like. If this Chui has such cultivation and authority one day, I will certainly build my cave residence in such an elegant manner. Yes, Chui Lang can definitely do it. Diu Aiqiming had a smile on her face, and her eyes were filled with tenderness. She quietly extended her hand and held Chui Hongshan's hand. Diu Aiqiming didn't particularly like Chui Hongshan in the past. She even felt that the myriad Thunder Valley of Seismic Thunder Palace wasn't worthy of her. In particular, the myriad Thunder Valley had always been weak, which made her master somewhat hesitant. She was afraid that Diu Aiqiming would suffer some grievances after marrying into the myriad Thunder Valley. She had also mentioned this in front of Diu Aiqiming. Diu Aiqiming had also vaguely revealed this matter to Chui Hongshan during their interactions. It could be considered as a warning in advance, such as Xian Yang's cowardice, Xiaohua's jokes, and so on. She had even pointed out that this might be the reason why the two of them couldn't dual cultivate in the future. Therefore, This was also the reason why Cui Hongshan had some resentment towards Xiao Hua. However, Cui Hongshan's performance was different from Xiang Yang and Xiao Hua's. He had a wide range of connections in Thunderclap Palace. While others mocked Myriad Thunder Valley, he endured the humiliation and became friends with them. In addition, his own aptitude was not bad. Gradually, he had some reputation in the seismic Thunder Palace. Dui Qiming and her master naturally also heard of him. Dui Qiming also gradually agreed to Cui Hongshan's dual cultivation in her heart. She felt that Cui Hongshan could revitalize the Myriad Thunder Valley. Xian Yang and Xiao Hua's weakness was also a good opportunity for Cui Hongshan to rise and even control the Myriad Thunder Valley. When Xian Yang returned to the mountain, Xiang Zhili suddenly became a new force to be reckoned with, and the Myriad Thunder Valley became even more dazzling. Dui Qiming's master's eyes were naturally very sharp. She knew that the Myriad Thunder Valley would definitely obtain the favor of Thunder Meng Taoist in the future by relying on Xiang Zhili. This was the best time for her to become friends with the Myriad Thunder Valley. In addition, the Myriad Thunder Valley had promised Dui Qiming a mysterious betrothal gift that could allow Dui Qiming to attain a gold core. She naturally agreed to Dui Qiming marrying the Myriad Thunder Valley. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to the person. At this crucial moment, a great sword battle appeared. It completely messed up the dual cultivation ceremony that the two had planned long ago. Just as Dui Qiming's heart was in a mess, she unexpectedly discovered that Cui Hongshan, who she thought highly of before, had unexpectedly exceeded her expectations. He had actually placed her in the same small team as him, and moreover, it was the first small team of the Imperial Thunder sect. Her heart, which was already in love with him, became even sweeter than honey. She knew that she had entrusted herself to a great husband, who far exceeded her expectations. Naturally, the sudden changes in the situation and the rise of strange peaks exceeded her expectations. It was the most inconceivable thing she had ever encountered since she became sensible. The joke, that the Myriad Thunder Valley was ridiculed by others, was actually not a joke, but a true legend. An early-stage foundation establishment cultivator whose cultivation was comparable to a gold core was precisely capable of turning the entire seismic Thunder Palace into a joke. With a fierce person like Xiao Hua in the Myriad Thunder Valley, would they still be bullied by the other disciples of the seismic Thunder Palace? If he didn't bully other disciples, they would be secretly happy. Of course, Dui Qiming naturally also considered for her sweetheart. With Xiao Hua, how would Cui Hongshan stand out in the Myriad Thunder Valley? However, if Xiao Hua's cultivation was at the middle stage of foundation establishment, Dui Qiming would still consider it. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's cultivation was comparable to the late stage of foundation establishment, which was close to the early stage of gold core. This was a helpless cultivation. He was simply not on the same level as Cui Hongshan. Dui Qiming only pondered for a moment before giving up. The two of them simply weren't on the same path. What puzzled Dui Qiming the most was that with Xiao Hua's cultivation, why was he so secretive? He didn't even know about helplessness. Of course, Cui Hongshan was still dazzling in the Myriad Thunder Valley even though Xiao Hua had concealed it. What made Dui Qiming feel the most at ease was Xiao Hua's attitude towards Cui Hongshan. She knew very well that the filth between the two of them was precisely because of Xiao Hua's narrow-mindedness. Dui Qiming was a woman, and she was very clear. Xiao Hua treated Cui Hongshan as a fellow disciple. Otherwise, not to mention rescuing them from the hands of the sword cultivators, even if he killed them all, who would know? And Xiao Hua gave them a lot of pills and flying swords without the slightest bit of stinginess. -8. Chapter 23-23. What was the reason for a narrow-minded person like Xiao Hua to not be stingy? Dui Qiming also understood that Xiao Hua definitely had more things in his hands. That was the storage pouches of dozens of sword cultivators. The things inside were unimaginable. Who did this belong to? Xiao Hua couldn't finish using it. If he couldn't use it, then it must belong to Myriad Thunder Valley. How many people were there in Myriad Thunder Valley? How much could Dui Qiming and Cui Hongshan get? It went without saying. What Dui Qiming admired the most was that Cui Hongshan's attitude towards Xiao Hua was still magnanimous, and neither haughty nor humble. Magnanimous because he tolerated Xiao Hua's little temper, as if Xiao Hua didn't reveal his cultivation. Neither haughty nor humble because Cui Hongshan still had the face of a senior brother. He didn't call himself junior brother just because Xiao Hua's cultivation was much higher than his. Wasn't this Cui Hongshan, who didn't feel joy from external gains and was extremely refined and gentlemanly, the perfect partner in Dui Qiming's heart? Feeling Dui Qiming's tenderness, Cui Hongshan's heart felt sweet. It seemed that all the grievances he had suffered and everything he had done before had been repaid. He unconsciously clenched his fist. This clench was far beyond any other action. It was the charm of two hearts touching. Cui, Captain Cui, these are spirit stones. Jin Minghui naturally turned a blind eye to the two's intimacy. However, when he walked past the stone pillar and accidentally touched it with his hand, he couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. What? Spirit stones? Senior brother Minghui, you said, this entire stone pillar is made of spirit stones? Hearing this, Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming were greatly shocked. The two let go of their hands and raised their heads at the same time, looking at that extremely tall and thick stone pillar with an inconceivable gaze. It wasn't that Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming had never seen spirit stones before. It wasn't that they hadn't thought of thousands of spirit stones appearing in this spirit stone mine. However, such a thick crystal pillar of spirit stones was erected here as a pillar. This kind of extravagance was something they had never dreamt of even in their dreams. This is a supreme-grade spirit stone? Dui Qiming moved her eyes over and scanned it with her divine sense. However, that divine sense was blocked by the runes outside of the crystal pillar. Impossible! Cui Hongshan shook his head. This should be the low-grade spirit stones left behind after Golden Spring Mountain excavated the spirit stone vein. Hee, I'll let Captain Cui know. This is a real top-grade spirit stone. The Quanjin Mountain Shi refinement disciple who had been leading the way and had not spoken a single word could not help but correct Cui Hongshan's self-righteousness. It's not just here, there are more in other places of my Quanjin Mountain. Ah? Top-grade spirit stones. How many are there in this hall? Cui Hongshan's face flashed with extreme embarrassment, which was immediately covered up by shock. His eyes swept across the hall. There were probably dozens or even hundreds of such large stone pillars in the hall. If they were all top-grade spirit stones, then how many would there be? It was simply enough to buy the entire Cui family, right? Hee, I'll let Captain Cui know. I've counted them before, and it's exactly 81. That aura-refining disciple couldn't help but show off. Moreover, I've heard the general occasionally mention that this is precisely the crystal pillar of some great formation. I understand now. Cui Hongshan nodded slightly, and his face returned to normal. He smiled and said, The Sky Patrol City is indeed generous. They've really put in a lot of effort for this spirit stone vein. Seeing Cui Hongshan's calm expression, that aura-refining disciple was actually a little disappointed. Thinking of the first time he saw so many top-grade spirit stones, he couldn't calm down even after dozens of days. The aura-refining disciple led Cui Hongshan and the other two to the table. When they were about a dozen feet away from the table, the aura-refining disciple stopped. He bowed and said, Captain Cui, these are the seats for your esteemed group's disciples. Please wait here for a moment. Our general will be here soon. Cui Hongshan looked to his left and right. In front of him were disciples dressed in Taoist robes from Splendid Sect and Xunyan Sect. On the left and right were disciples from Lian Country and Ming Country. Knowing that this seat was arranged by Golden Spring Mountain, he cupped his hands and said, Thank you, fellow cultivator. After that aura-refining disciple left, Cui Hongshan and the others stood quietly with their eyes slightly closed, waiting for Tu Hong's arrival. After a few minutes, there was another series of footsteps. Chui Hongshan and the others turned their heads slightly and saw that the disciples of Utopia faction and Tai Ching sect were also led in by Golden Spring Mountain's disciples. Naturally, both Yifan Yuan and Yang Fangqing were shocked by this huge top-grade spirit stone crystal pillar. Looking at their astonishment and embarrassment, Chui Hongshan smiled in his heart. Heh, so it's not only me, but also the disciples of these big sects are also making a fool of themselves. When Yifan Yuan stopped and glanced at the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, he saw that Xiaohua wasn't among them. His face showed a trace of relief. Then he cupped his hands slightly towards Chui Hongshan and transmitted his voice. Captain Chui, why didn't junior brother Xiao come? Chui Hongshan replied with a smile. Xiaohua is refining his cultivation method. He didn't have time to come. Captain what's the matter? Heh, it's nothing. Yifan Yuan thought for a while and said, Junior brother Xiao killed the bird cultivator to avenge my Tai Ching sect's disciples. Earlier, junior brother Zhao's primeval essence was exhausted and he was recovering. I didn't dare to disturb him. I originally wanted to see him here and thank him in person. I can bring these words back. Chui Hongshan was a little puzzled. Moreover, I'm afraid tomorrow is our turn. There will be a time when we meet. Captain, he can also mention this to Xiaohua. That, heh. Yifan Yuan looked around and saw Yang Fengqing's gaze. He nodded slightly at him and said to Chui Hongshan, Actually, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can fulfill it. Oh? What is it? I hope, Captain, he can explain it clearly. Chui Hongshan really didn't understand and secretly wondered if it had anything to do with Xiaohua. Sure enough, Yifan Yuan hesitated slightly before smiling apologetically. My Tai Ching sect's disciples were saved by Imperial Thunder sect's disciples. I have already recorded this in my captain token. Regardless of whether I live or die, my Tai Ching sect will definitely repay this favor to Imperial Thunder sect. Captain Chui, your first team's contribution will not be small. Chui Hongshan heard this and was overjoyed, nodding. This matter was all done by Xiaohua. Heh, Captain Chui, no need to be modest. Yifan Yuan waved his hand. Fellow Taoist Zhao's contributions are truly great. But fellow Taoist Chui and the others didn't fear the sword cultivator and risked their lives to save him. I am truly impressed. Heh, many thanks, Captain Chui Hongshan knew there would be a but after this, so he smiled and nodded. However, that disciple of my Tai Ching sect, Yifan Yuan said with difficulty. Since he was already killed by the bird cultivator, that moment of cowardice earlier can't be his only performance. Moreover, his performance since the beginning of the battle was not bad. At that time, it was just a moment of confusion. The ancients often say that a single slip will cause everlasting sorrow. Chui Hongshan suddenly realized and hurriedly stopped Yifan Yuan's words. He smiled and said, Captain don't say too much. The record in my captain token is even simpler. It only states that I met fellow Taoist Tai Ching sect and helped him. Nothing else is written. Yifan Yuan heard this and was overjoyed. He bowed and said, Thank you, Captain Chui. Heh, you're welcome. Chui Hongshan also cupped his hands from afar. In addition, fellow Taoist Yang Fangqing of the Utopia faction and fellow Taoist Kuxingxi of the Kunlun sect also had the same idea. This matter is a disgrace to all the sections. If we explain it at this time, it will definitely affect the morale of the disciples of all the sects. Yifan Yuan said again. So we discussed and only recorded the disciples involved in this matter in the captain token. I hope that Captain Chui will not inform Sky Patrol City of this matter when you are at Quanjin Mountain. When you return to Sky Patrol City, you can report it to Yanxi Prefecture's meeting hall. After all, this is our Dao sect's own matter. There is no need to let Sky Patrol City know so clearly. Heh, this is what Xiaohua wants. Chui Hongshan narrowed his eyes and muttered in his heart. He knew that Xiaohua did not want to attract attention. However, Chui Hongshan frowned and said with a bitter expression, I can naturally cover up the matter regarding the Tai Ching sect's disciples, but the disciples of the other sects. Even if I agree to it, my junior brother won't agree to it. Captain, he also knows that he abhors evil. I'm afraid it will not be easy to deal with him. I'll have to rely on Captain Chui to deal with him. Fan Yuan's heart relaxed when he heard this. Xiao Hua's cultivation was high. He was a little anxious and felt that he did not dare to say too much. Facing Cui Hongshan, Fan Yuan could say it. We are all fellow Taoists who bathed in blood together in the sword battle. Not to mention others, fellow Taoists Yang Fangqing and Kuxingxi have long had the intention to befriend fellow Taoist Cui. Although we can't be sworn brothers with the secular world, we can share blessings and misfortunes together. Good. Cui Hongshan nodded. Just as Captain, he said, we are fellow Taoists who have gone through life and death together. Tai Qing Sect's Captain, his matter is my matter, and fellow Taoist Yang and Kuxingxi's matter is also my matter. Captain, please rest assured, I will agree to this matter. Great! Fan Yuan was very happy and cupped his fists at Cui Hongshan again. Then, he transmitted his voice to Yang Fangqing and the others. Not long after, Yang Fangqing, Kuxingxi, and even the captains of other sects who came first also thanked Cui Hongshan. Deserting in the face of danger was indeed despised by all cultivators in the sword battle. Especially in Jinquan Mountain, in front of Patrol Heaven City, and in front of the other sects of the Three Kingdoms, it was definitely a taboo for Tai Qing's sect and the other sections. Cui Hongshan not mentioning this matter was naturally giving face to the other sections. Fan Yuan and the others had to accept this favor, and this favor was also extremely huge. Then, Cui Hongshan transmitted his voice to Zhen Minghui and Diu Aiqiming. Both of them nodded. Diu Aiqiming looked at her lover and felt that he was even more lofty. Cough, cough. A low cough came from behind the table in front of everyone. On the stone wall behind the table, a faint yellow light flashed, and a short, and even somewhat stooped old man walked out of the light. Seeing that the cultivator's white hair and the hardships on his face, Cui Hongshan was secretly disappointed. This was not the image of General Tu Hongtu in his heart. To be continued. -8. Chapter 23-24. Fellow Taoists, my family's general has some matters to attend to and will be delayed for a moment. This old man came first to apologize to all of you fellow Taoists. The old man walked to the side of the table, but didn't sit down on the jade chair. Instead, he slowly walked to the side of the table and cupped his hands across his chest as he spoke. Sure enough, this isn't Tu Hong. Cui Hongshan was overjoyed. He immediately probed the old man's cultivation. Sure enough, he was only at the late Foundation establishment realm. Haha, we wouldn't dare. Senior Tu is busy, so we will wait here. For him to send Senior here, it really makes us juniors panic. A disciple of the Splendid Flower sect respectfully said. Haha, this old man is Lon Xian. I am the general's assistant. The old man smiled. Fellow Taoists have come to help and are honored guests of my Golden Springs Mountain. How could this old man not come to receive you? However, because this is a war, wine is not allowed. Otherwise, with the general's hospitable personality, he would have already prepared a feast to welcome you. Haha, old Master Lon, what are you saying behind my back? A hearty voice sounded out. From the brilliance that Lon Xian had just appeared, a tall middle-aged cultivator walked out. Cui Hongshan's eyes brightened. This cultivator had a square face. His face was fair and clean, with silkworm eyebrows and phoenix eyes. His nose was like a hanging gallbladder, and he had a long beard. His eyes were filled with righteousness. This is a true general. Cui Hongshan secretly cheered in his heart. Not only does he have a dignified appearance, but he is also kind and approachable. He only delayed us for a moment, and yet this subordinate has to come here and apologize. He is truly admirable. Looking at Tu Hong's body, he wasn't wearing an ordinary Taoist robe, but a soft armor that protected his vest. The valiant aura of this armor accentuated his scholarly elegance, making him stand out from the masses. Haha, General, How could this old man dare to speak ill of the general? I was only casually chatting with fellow Taoists. As Lan Xian spoke, she turned to the cultivators and nodded with a smile. But at this time, Lan Xian's eyes swept over the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and saw the smiling Du Ichiming. Ah! Lan Xian's eyebrows shot up, her eyes flashing with amazement. But then, she turned to look at Tu Hong. As Tu Hong saw Lan Xian's gaze, he was also startled. Following her gaze, he naturally saw Du Ichiming. Tu Hong's pupils suddenly widened, then returned to normal. Even the expression on his face changed slightly. Hee, old Master Lan, have you seen the fellow Taoists from the various sects who came to reinforce us? Tu Hong was still smiling as he asked. His gaze left Du Ichiming and gently swept across the disciples of the other sects. All right, I'll let the general know that I haven't had the chance to get to know each and every one of you. Lan Xian also regained her composure. She bowed and said, This old woman didn't think that the High General would arrive so quickly. And, all of you are my Jin Quan Mountain's guests, they risked their lives to come here, how can this old man treat them badly? There's no need to mention other trivial matters. As Tu Hong spoke, he cupped his hands across his chest and said, This old man is Tu Hong, the guard of my Sky Patrol city at Jin Quan Mountain. Fellow Taoists have come to my Jin Quan Mountain for many days, but this old man has not seen any of you, so I feel very uneasy. I ask that fellow Taoists be magnanimous and forgive me. We greet Senior too. The cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They all bowed in respect. Haha, do you think this old man is old? Tu Hong stretched out his hand and stroked his 5 strands of beard. He smiled and said, It looks like this old man will have to call himself Tu. Haha, Senior Tu is truly approachable. A captain of the Black Sky sect smiled and said, Your appearance is similar to this junior's senior apprentice brother. If Senior wasn't a golden core cultivator, then this junior would have called you Senior apprentice brother. Haha, Lan Xian also smiled and said, The High General has eaten the youth-preserving herb, so your appearance will never change. In addition, your hot-bloodedness has ensured the safety of my Jin Quan Mountain. That is something this old man cannot do. That's enough. Tu Hong waved his hand and sat down on a jade chair. He smiled and said, The greetings are over. Fellow Taoists, please tell me about the situation from Sky Patrol City. This way, this too can have a clear idea of what happened and see if there is any way to reveal our whereabouts. Yes. Lan Xian replied from the side. She turned to the cultivators and said, Fellow Taoists, please follow the order of the Lian Nation, Meng Nation, and Shi Nation. Follow the order from the beginning to the end. Thus, the disciples of the various sects followed Lan Xian's instructions. One by one, they began to recount what happened after they left Sky Patrol City's transmission array. As for Tu Hong, he sat upright on his jade chair, his expression solemn. He no longer had the playful smile from before. His eyes shined as he listened, and from time to time, he would interject and ask a few questions. It's a bit troublesome. Cui Hongshan heard the disciples of the various sects say that they had encountered different sword cultivators. They had fought life and death battles, and there had been some casualties. Moreover, the cultivation of these sword cultivators wasn't too high. Cui Hongshan suddenly realized that they had encountered dozens of swordsmen. That was definitely not something that the 10 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect could deal with. If this matter were to spread out, Xiaohua would definitely become famous in one fell swoop. But that bastard concealed his cultivation, wasn't it because he didn't want others to know? Last time at Chicken Crow Mountain, he also clearly said not to mention his cultivation. Cui Hongshan said with a faint feeling of jealousy. However, after he heard He Fan Yuan and Yang Fengqing's words, he had a plan in his heart. What these two people said was the same as what they had discussed before. They only said that they had encountered a beast cultivator at the end, and at the critical moment of being besieged, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples had come to help. They didn't mention any disciples that had escaped. Since others had concealed it, he could certainly conceal it. When Cui Hongshan reported, he clearly stated the route he had taken, as well as the sword cultivators and beast cultivators he had encountered. However, the cultivation and number of sword cultivators had shrunk. Tu Hong also nodded as he listened. After Cui Hongshan finished, he said, "In a great battle of the sword path, our Dao Sect's cultivators should work together to resist the enemy. This time, Imperial Thunder Sect came to help our Jin Quan Mountain Spirit Stone Mine. They had done well in this matter. When the other sect's disciples were in danger, they stepped forward despite the difficulties and risked their lives. They should be rewarded." Then, he looked at the others and said, "I would like to report this to Sky Patrol City and award Jin Quan Mountain's first great merit to Imperial Thunder Sect's first team. Does anyone have any objections? My Tai Ching sect supports it." He Fan Yuan was the first to raise his hand without hesitation. Yang Fangqing, Kuxingxi and the rest also agreed. The other cultivators looked at each other helplessly. It was very obvious that although there were more than a dozen disciples behind the Imperial Thunder Sect who hadn't reported, from the previous reports, it seemed that apart from the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect who acted to save others, most of the other teams didn't care about their own safety and escaped if they could. Even if someone acted, it was only to save one team. How could they save 4 or 5 teams at once? "We have no objections." The other disciples naturally knew that Tu Hong was trying to motivate them and raise their morale. They had no objections to Imperial Thunder Sect's reward, so they raised their hands and agreed with a bitter expression. -8. Chapter 23-25. "Captain Cui, bring out your token," Lan Xian said with a smile. "Yes." Cui Hongshan's heart was filled with excitement. This merit came too easily. His luck, this opportunity was truly indescribable. After Tu Hong wrote something on Cui Hongshan's token, he looked at it and smiled. "I have always been clear about rewards and punishments. For the Imperial Thunder Sect to do such a good deed, I must definitely reward them. Afterwards, I will report this matter to Sky Patrol City and ask them to inform the meeting hall to reward the Imperial Thunder Sect's first squad." Cui Hongshan received the token and bowed. "This junior thanks Senior Tu for the reward. This junior will engrave this matter in my heart and carefully explain Senior's words to this subordinate. I will strive to achieve more merits in the sword war." "Good." Tu Hong clapped his hands. "Fellow Taoist Cui's words are exactly what I was thinking. The sword war has just begun and there will be many opportunities for you to achieve merits. Even in my Golden Spring Mountain, there will still be opportunities to do so in the future. I want to see which fellow Taoist is worthy of my reward. Furthermore, as fellow Taoists can see, my Golden Spring Mountain may not have much, but we have a lot of spirit stones and other items. If any fellow Taoist can contribute to my Golden Spring Mountain, this too will definitely not treat him unfairly." "Yes, we understand." Everyone's eyes brightened as they heard that there would be spirit stones as rewards. They bowed and said. After waiting for the dozens of sects to finish explaining the situation, Tu Hong smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, you have worked hard. Under the arrangement and leadership of all of you, although there are close to 3,000 disciples who came to my Golden Spring Mountain, according to what I know, they did not arouse the suspicion of the sword cultivators. This is indeed worthy of celebration. In fact, this is a great merit. I will definitely report this matter to Sky Patrol City." "Yes, thank you, Senior Tu." The cultivators beamed with joy. "As for the rest of the fellow Taoists, I will leave the arrangements to fellow Taoist Lan. I still have some official business to attend to, so forgive me for not accompanying you." Tu Hong stood up and cupped his hands before turning to leave. As he left, his eyes couldn't help but sweep over the Imperial Thunder Sect's Dui Chiming. "Farewell, Senior Tu." Everyone bowed. Dui Chiming was also very grateful for Tu Hong's reward to the Imperial Thunder Sect and smiled respectfully. After Tu Hong left, Lan Xian took out a jade slip from her bosom. She smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, here are all Foundation Establishment cultivators. You are far stronger than the disciples of my Golden Springs Mountain. My Golden Springs Mountain will definitely provide you with a strong support. For the past 10 days, the Commander-in-Chief has been racking his brains to make arrangements to properly set up the defense of my Golden Spring Mountain. Of course, as fellow Taoists can see, my Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array is perfect. Even if sword cultivators were to fly over it, they wouldn't be able to sense it. At the same time, this old man will reveal one more thing. Even if 10 illusory sword cultivators attack at the same time, my Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array will definitely not be broken. Furthermore, these 10 illusory swordsmen may not be able to escape unscathed. As these words came out, all of the cultivators present smiled. Even if Lan Xian's words were a bit exaggerated, the truth was that she could resist at least 5 of them. 5 sword cultivators that were equivalent to Golden Core stage cultivators. Just how sturdy was this Golden Spring Mountain's array? Just how stable would they be inside the array? Sending so many disciples out, isn't this a bit too much for the assembly hall? Are the other spirit stone veins the same? Many ideas were born in the minds of the disciples present. Of course, this array formation still needs someone to preside over it. As if Lan Xian knew what everyone was thinking, she smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, you will be the main force behind this array formation in the future. However, I ask that fellow Taoists rest assured, there is no need to consume any magic power. As long as you understand the law formula, you will be able to channel the heaven and earth spiritual energy from the spirit stones into the array formation. My Golden Spring Mountain may lack many things, but there is one thing that I lack the most, and one thing that I do not lack the least. What I do not lack the least is spirit stones, and what I lack the most is disciples with the same cultivation as you fellow Taoists." Then, Lan Xian carefully explained the matters of the patrol. She divided the days and areas that each squad would patrol, and finally gave out the jade slip for the defensive array formation. However, when she passed the jade slip to Cui Hongshan, there was a slight hesitation. It was just that Cui Hongshan and the others didn't notice this. Everyone took their respective jade slips and bowed to bid their farewells to Lan Xian. Lan Xian quietly stood there, watching everyone leave. Her eyes didn't hesitate for a moment as she stared straight at Dui Qiming's back. He waited until Dui Qiming held Cui Hongshan's hand and walked out of the hall. Then, he sighed, turned around, and walked into the stone wall that had appeared. As the stone wall flashed with a brilliant light, his figure disappeared from sight. He didn't even care that there were still many Tao sect disciples that were slowly walking away. The place that Lan Xian appeared in was like a palace. Besides the gorgeous carvings and exquisite decorations, there were only a dozen or so handsome servants standing around. Seeing Lan Xian walk in, the servants immediately bowed in greeting. Lan Xian simply ignored them and didn't ask where Tu Hong was. She walked down the corridor, heading towards the deepest part of the palace. She knew that besides that place, Tu Hong absolutely wouldn't go anywhere else. As Lan Xian walked, the decorations of the palace became even more gorgeous. But the number of servants also decreased. When she arrived at a secluded quiet room, there was no one left. The quiet room was very empty. It wasn't too large and was quiet. Lan Xian stood in front of a stone wall, quietly standing there without speaking. After waiting for half a cup of tea's time, a slightly tired voice sounded out. "Old brother Lan, you can come in." This voice was Tu Hong. "Yes, this old man obeys," Lan Xian respectfully responded. Then, she saw a yellow circle appear on the stone wall. The circle slowly rotated, forming a deep vortex. A massive suction force covered Lan Xian, sucking her in. Lan Xian didn't struggle. She knew that this spell was personally controlled by Tu Hong. Without Tu Hong's permission, no disciple of Gold Spring Mountain could enter. Of course, as far as Lan Xian knew, besides her, no other disciple of Gold Spring Mountain could set foot in this forbidden land. The place where Lan Xian's figure was revealed was different from the palace. It was actually a slightly barren place. Not only was the light dim here, but the temperature was also much lower than in the snow region. This barren place was completely paved with cobblestones. Between the cobblestones, there were some light purple thorns that stubbornly pointed towards the sky. Above the thorns and cobblestones, there was a layer of frost like salt. On top of the cobblestones, around 100 feet away from Lan Xian, there were two massive tents erected there. These two tents were oval in shape, with a high protrusion in the middle. There was a several-foot-tall mast erected in the middle of the tents, and above this mast was a square flag. However, this flag was empty without any sign at all. Just as Lan Xian stood there, her white hair began to condense into a layer of frost. However, he didn't step forwards. Instead, he placed his hands on his chest and lowered his head, silently looking at the cobblestones beneath his feet. It was like every cobblestone had its own sad and beautiful story. "Old brother Lan, how long has it been since you last came? Come and have a drink with me." "Yes, I will obey the orders of the general." As Lan Xian heard Tu Hong's words, she lifted her foot and walked towards the tent, step by step. Every time she stepped on the cobblestone would emit a rustling sound. These cobblestones actually didn't have any spells on them. When Lan Xian arrived in front of the tent, she saw the tent's curtains. Her eyes flashed with a strange light. She lifted the curtains and walked in. The tent was covered with a thick cotton carpet. As she stepped on it, she felt weak all over. On the left side of the curtains was a giant sand table. On it were some mountains and rivers, as well as several cities. There were even some small humanoid dolls standing on top of it, holding long spears in their hands. In front of the curtains there were some ordinary chairs placed on top of the cotton carpet. Behind these chairs, there was a shelf, and on this shelf, there were sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and all sorts of other weapons. In front of the curtains was a table. This table had already faded in color, and was extremely similar to the table in the reception hall. There was also a flask on top of it, and within the flask were some arrows. After these arrows, Tu Hong held a large bowl in his hands. He glanced at Lan Xian, tilted his head back, and drank all the strong wine in the bowl. And on top of this table, there was a blue porcelain jug. Gold Spring Mountain Tu Hong, a Golden Core Realm cultivator's secret hideout, was actually a military tent. Lan Xian walked in front of the table and picked up the blue porcelain jug. She respectfully poured wine into the bowl that Tu Hong had placed down, and then filled another bowl to the brim. She picked up the wine bowl with both hands and raised it above her head. She respectfully said, "Lan Xian offers a toast to the general." "Good." Tu Hong stretched out his hand, placing his index and middle fingers on the inside of the wine bowl and his thumb on the outside. He gently lifted the wine bowl and brought it forward until it touched Lan Xian's bowl. He said, "Come, cheers!" Gulp! 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 As Tu Hong gulped down the wine, the strong liquor flowed down his long beard and actually soaked his armor. If Cui Hongshan was here, he would definitely open his eyes wide. He couldn't believe that the refined Tu Hong actually had such a bold and unrestrained side to him. "That's great!" Lan Xian also drank in a single breath. Her clothes were soaked through. She sighed. "This is still a burning knife. Spicy and satisfying, the taste doesn't change at all. It's far better than any spirit wine. Since you haven't drunk in a long time, let's have 2 more cups." With a loud crash, Tu Hong slammed the wine bowl on the table and reached out to pick up the wine jug. Lan Xian didn't dare to be negligent. She quickly grabbed the wine jug and apologetically smiled. "This old man will." As she spoke, she poured out 2 more bowls of wine and accompanied Tu Hong to drink 2 more cups. Suddenly, a dark red color rose up from Lan Xian's face. "Old brother Lan! Your capacity for alcohol, even though you've reached foundation establishment, you still haven't changed." Tu Hong smiled. He reached out for the wine jug and poured himself a bowl, not giving one to Lan Xian. "This old man can't compare to the general." Lan Xian smiled and said, "I don't need to use true essence to refine this strong wine. 2 bowls are enough." -8. Chapter 23-26. I'm afraid you won't be able to experience the taste of 1,000 cups without getting drunk. Tu Hong waved his hand and drank another bowl of wine. Lan Xian smiled as she watched Tu Hong drink the wine, the dark red on his face gradually fading away. After Tu Hong drank a bowl of wine, he didn't stop. Instead, he drank another bowl after another without stopping. Lan Xian only respectfully stood there, watching, not saying a single word. Tu Hong picked up the wine jug and couldn't pour out a single drop. With a sigh, he tossed the wine jug to the side on the thick cotton carpet. Lan Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "This old woman didn't dare to ask. I wonder what Mian Shan's methods were like? Like? Naturally, it would shock the world. Even I found it inconceivable." Tu Hong's eyebrows shot up. He glanced at Lan Xian and then back at the empty bowl. "Oh? Then I'm afraid this old woman will have to congratulate General." Lan Xian looked at Tu Hong's expression and tentatively cupped her hands together. "If this was before today, I would have been overjoyed to hear your congratulations," Tu Hong said as he looked at the empty wine bowl, a bit self-deprecating. "This?" Lan Xian bit her lips. She didn't know how to respond. "Come! Old brother Lan, come with me!" Tu Hong bitterly smiled and stood up from his chair. The chair creaked, as if it were also abnormally old. "Yes." Lan Xian's heart tightened. She quickly followed behind Tu Hong. Tu Hong stood up. After several steps, he arrived at another curtain of the tent. As Tu Hong lifted the curtain, he saw the situation of the other tent. This tent was even more desolate. Besides a bed-like object standing in the middle of the tent, there was nothing else. And on this bed was a transparent crystal coffin. And inside this crystal coffin, there was a beautiful female cultivator lying on her back. If a single Imperial Thunder Sect disciple were to come here, they would definitely cry out in amazement. This was because this beautiful female cultivator looked almost exactly the same as Dui Qiming. As Tu Hong stepped into the tent, the anxiety in his eyes gradually faded and was replaced by a trace of gentleness. His footsteps were light, as if he was afraid of waking up the female cultivator from her sweet dreams. As Lan Xian entered the tent, she looked towards the crystal coffin. But as she saw the appearance of the female cultivator within, she frowned. She followed Tu Hong and quietly walked in front of the crystal coffin. "You Meng." As Lan Xian saw Tu Hong standing in front of the crystal coffin without speaking, she tentatively asked. But before she could finish speaking, Tu Hong raised his hand, indicating for her to shut up. Then, he clapped his hands together and took out a small bell from his storage bag. It was very similar to Xiaohua's soul-sucking bell. Then, Tu Hong raised his hand and lifted the lid of the crystal coffin, revealing the face of the female cultivator. There was a faint layer of frost on her charming face. She was just like an ice beauty. Dang, dang, dang. The soul-suppressing bell in Tu Hong's hand rang. The female cultivator's tightly shut eyes slowly moved, then she opened them. She slowly stood up, looked around, and jumped out of the crystal coffin in a flash. She bowed to Tu Hong and said, "Greetings, husband." You Meng, stand up." With a smile on his face, Tu Hong reached out and grabbed Yu Meng's hand. The coldness from Yu Meng's hand instantly penetrated his heart. "Congratulations, Lord General!" Lan Xian bowed, her face full of amazement. "The soul cultivator techniques of the Million Ming Mountains, they are truly mysterious. This old woman really cannot imagine it. Ha, what's there to be happy about?" Tu Hong ruefully smiled and pointed at Yu Meng. "Old brother Lan, take a look. Is there any difference between Yu Meng and the past, or perhaps, is there any difference between us?" Lan Xian didn't know if she had seen clearly just now, but she looked again and again. She smiled and said, "Lord General, this old woman saw that Yu Meng's eyes were dull, without any emotion. She is somewhat similar to a puppet. But she is indeed Yu Meng. She is similar to the Million Meng Mountains soul cultivators. The promise is also similar." "Ha, that's right." Tu Hong nodded. He looked at Yu Meng and smiled. "When I first saw Yu Meng open her eyes from the crystal coffin, the ecstasy in my heart was incomparable. At that time, I only thought that even if I had to give the entire Gold Spring Mountain to the soul cultivators, it would still be worth it. But when I saw Yu Ming's current appearance, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. It's just that they clearly said that the dead cannot be resurrected. Although the soul cultivator's secret techniques are linked to the soul, they cannot create something out of nothing. They can only use a soul artifact to control a person's body. To put it bluntly, Yu Ming is not the Yu Ming of the past. She is now nothing more than an empty shell. She is only relying on this soul artifact to support herself. As he spoke, Tu Hong shook the bell and said, "Yu Ming, help your husband bring over some strong wine." "Yes, this concubine understands." Yu Ming bowed and slowly walked towards another tent. Her face was as cold as ever, without the least bit of emotion. Isn't this similar to the magic of some of the cultivation sects in the country of Shi? Lan Xian looked at Yu Ming's graceful back and whispered, "The Million Ming Mountain soul cultivators wouldn't deceive us, right?" "No, they wouldn't." Tu Hong shook his head. "What I'm looking for is not an ordinary soul cultivator, but someone with some background. Someone who has a deep understanding of my Dawn-Rain continent, is far from those uncivilized soul cultivators. Moreover, they have clearly stated that those aristocratic families in the country of Shi are refining Yu Ming's body into a puppet. Yu Ming will listen to whoever takes the soul artifact. But at this time, Yu Ming is relying on her soul to disperse the mark in her body. She only recognizes me. Even if someone else were to take the soul artifact, it would be useless. Of course, Yu Ming has been sacrificed for many years. I used this crystal coffin to preserve her appearance. If I didn't use a soul cultivator's secret technique to refine her, she still wouldn't be able to leave this place." That's right." Lan Xian understood. She sighed and said, "A perfectly good person is now nothing more than a puppet. Even I, an old man, am unable to calm my heart." "That's right. Before today, I also had the same thoughts." Tu Hong's eyes flashed with sorrow. "I only wanted to stay by Yu Ming's side and watch her unchanging appearance slowly grow old. When the day comes that I reach the end of my life, I will accompany her to the 9 nether realms. But today, I saw a living Yu Ming." Lan Xian forced a smile. That's right." Tu Hong's eyes flashed with a thoughtful expression. "When I saw that female cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect, I was simply stupid. Wasn't this a gift from the heavens? A few days ago, the soul cultivators had just left, and now this female cultivator has delivered herself to my doorstep. Wasn't it because the heavens saw my painstaking efforts and came to help me?" -8. Chapter 23-27. A million soul cultivators from Ming Mountain? Lan Xian also thoughtfully asked. At this time, Yu Ming walked in with a jug of wine in her hands. She easily placed the jug in front of Tu Hong. "Oh? Where's the wine bowl?" Tu Hong took the jug and glanced at Yu Ming's empty right hand. "I'll go get it." Yu Ming's expression didn't change. She lightly said as she turned around. "No need. Go back and rest." Tu Hong's face flashed with gloom as he whispered, "Yes, husband." Yu Ming complied and entered the crystal coffin again. She lay down on her back and closed her eyes. Dang dang. Tu Hong shook the bell again, and Yu Ming immediately quieted down and remained motionless. "Let's go." Tu Hong closed the lid of the crystal coffin and turned to leave the tent. Lan Xian didn't dare to be negligent. She quickly followed him out. Outside the tent, it was abnormally cold. Tu Hong looked up, squinting his eyes as he looked at the pitch-black ceiling. After a long time, he tilted his head back, took a sip of the strong wine, and handed the jug to Lan Xian. Lan Xian didn't dare to refuse. She also took a small sip, but she didn't hand the jug over to Tu Hong. Tu Hong pointed a finger above his head and said, "The soul cultivators have already said that if I hadn't spent a great deal of money to bid for this magic tool fragment called the icy mirror, then I would have created an icy cold space here. If I hadn't placed Yu Ming in the crystal coffin after she died, then even if they had secret soul cultivation techniques, they still wouldn't have been able to awaken her. Moreover, if they didn't have Yu Ming's soul, or if they had a soul that was extremely similar to Yu Ming's soul, then she could only move about in the crystal coffin and the ice-sea mirror. Ah? A soul that is similar to Yu Ming's soul. General is saying. Lan Xian cried out in surprise. Tu Hong didn't even look at Lan Xian. He lifted his hand and took the jug of wine from Lan Xian's hand. He took a long drink and laughed. Yes, it is that female cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect? Although I don't know if her soul is similar to Yu Ming's, since they have the same appearance, it is extremely likely that their souls are similar. How could I possibly give up such an excellent opportunity? This old man understands. Lan Xian nodded. When I assign tasks, I already switched the Imperial Thunder sect's positions and transferred them to the most core area. General, find an opportunity to capture Imperial Thunder sect's Dui Qiming. Sigh, what a pity. If it were that simple, why would I hesitate? Tu Hong smiled bitterly. Lan Xian thought for a moment and smiled. Are there any other taboos? Yes, there are a few taboos. Tu Hong nodded. First of all, the soul cultivator told me that the soul must be in perfect condition and must not be damaged in any way. Secondly, the owner of the soul must be willing, otherwise the soul won't be pure. If it carries the owner's imprint, it will break Yu Meng's imprint. If Yu Meng can no longer be resurrected, even if she changes her body, she will still be Dui Qiming. This is troublesome. Lan Xian shook her head. This Dui Qiming seems to be a couple with their captain, Cui Hongshan. He's just an early-stage Foundation establishment brat. He's nothing. Tu Hong sneered. This too knows that this time I have completed the city lord's plan. How could he not grant this small wish of mine? Won't the Yanxi prefecture grant the wish of a Jindan stage cultivator from the Sentry City? Do you want this old man too? Lan Xian whispered. No need. Tu Hong arched an eyebrow and proudly said. It would be easy for this two to kill that bastard, but this two disdains it. Besides, if Cui Hongshan dies in Golden Spring Mountain, others won't say anything. But when this two asks the city lord for Dui Qiming in the future, wouldn't those people be able to use it against me? If those self-righteous fools from the Yanxi prefecture investigate this matter, then it will become an obstacle. This old man understands. Lan Xian nodded but then asked, Then Golden Spring Mountain, won't protect Cui Hongshan? Won't I let him die here? This too won't do it, old brother Lan won't do it, and even my Golden Spring Mountain disciples won't do it. Tu Hong drank another mouthful of wine and smiled. But who can guarantee that a sword cultivator won't do it? This too can't protect an Imperial Thunder sect disciple just because he has scruples. Wouldn't that be even more of a weakness? This old man understands. Lan Xian nodded. This old man knows what to do. In this war, 5 out of 10 will remain. If the Imperial Thunder sect disciples are lucky, then they will survive. If they aren't, then let them die. Tu Hong picked up the wine jug and slowly walked back into the tent. In Lan Xian's eyes, his back was increasingly lonely. Lan Xian sighed. She knew that it wasn't appropriate for her to stay here any longer. She bowed and said, General, this old man will retire. Go. Tu Hong waved his hand. Arrange everything well. Perhaps that sword cultivator will come in a few days. Yes. Lan Xian turned and walked towards the stone wall. A powerful vortex sucked her in, and she disappeared from sight. What? There are actually so many top-grade spirit stone crystal pillars in the reception hall? Xiaohua had been called out from Cui Hongshan's seclusion room and was very unhappy in his heart. But when he heard that Golden Spring Mountain's top-grade spirit stones were used in such a manner, his eyes began to shine. He smacked his lips and said, Isn't this too much of a waste of heaven's gifts? Looking at Xiaohua's appearance, Cui Hongshan gave birth to a trace of contempt. Damn it, it's a good thing that I didn't let this bastard go, otherwise. I'm afraid he would have thrown himself onto those spirit stone crystal pillars and used his teeth to bite off a piece of the top-grade spirit stone. A wandering cultivator, no matter how high their cultivation is, they are still different from my cultivation family's upbringing. No matter how high Xiaohua's cultivation is, compared to Senior Tu Hong, the difference is like clouds and mud. Junior Apprentice Brother Xiao, Golden Spring Mountain's crystal pillars are array formations. They are used for defense. Jin Mingwei chuckled as he explained. He naturally understood Xiaohua's shock. Wasn't he also dumbfounded at that time? Also, what that disciple of Golden Spring Mountain said was correct. Golden Spring Mountain may lack anything, but they will never lack spirit stones. That's great, that's great. We came to the right place. Xiaohua rubbed his fingers together, as if he were already holding some top-grade spirit stones in his hands. Immediately after, Cui Hongshan said a few more things, but Xiaohua didn't listen in his heart. His mind was filled with the shiny spirit stones. Xiaohua! Cui Hongshan shouted. What? What's the matter? Xiaohua obviously didn't hear what Cui Hongshan said. He was slightly stunned. Cui Hongshan was happy in his heart. He didn't care about Xiaohua's expression and said, Golden Spring Mountain Senior Tu Hong gave my Imperial Thunder Sect a great merit the moment we met. This Cui knows that this is all thanks to you. Now, this Cui wants to discuss with you, should this Cui directly record your merit in the captain token? Or should this merit be recorded on my first squad's disciples? Cui Hongshan mentioning this matter in front of everyone was quite thought-provoking. It could be said that he was frank and sincere, but it could also be said that he had ulterior motives. However, Xiaohua was too lazy to think about what he was thinking. He waved his hand and said with a smile, Naturally, it's everyone's merit. If it wasn't for everyone trying their best to kill the beast cultivators, I'm afraid you would have already been killed by them. Junior Marshal Brother Xiao! Du Aiqiming glanced at Cui Hongshan with some dissatisfaction and advised. Actually, against the sword cultivators, we did put in some effort, but against the beast cultivators and giants, it was all thanks to Junior Marshal Brother Xiao. It's all thanks to Junior Marshal Brother's strength. If we lose the credit, we won't feel at ease. Merit or storage pouch, which is more important? Xiaohua pursed his lips and extended his hand. Senior Marshal Sister Dui, feel free to ask for the merit. Just give the items to Junior Marshal Brother. Junior Marshal Brother doesn't know. Du Aiqiming was anxious. After the Sword Dao battle, we will return to the Imperial Thunder Sect and be rewarded according to our merit. Isn't this merit good stuff? Xiaohua nodded. When the time comes, just give the good stuff to Xiaohua. All right. Du Aiqiming sized up Xiaohua with her beautiful eyes. She really didn't understand why Xiaohua didn't like to be famous. If she had Xiaohua's cultivation, she would have already made a name for herself in the Sword Dao tournament. By the time she returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect's Dui Palace, wouldn't she be able to get whatever cultivation method and spirit pills she wanted? Maybe everyone has their own ambitions. Du Aiqiming could only think like this. After that, Cui Hongshan took out Quan Jinshan's jade slip and told them the area that the Imperial Thunder Sect's first squad had to guard, as well as the location of the supporting array. He then made 10 copies of the jade slip and gave each of them a copy. The Imperial Thunder Sect was responsible for a very large area. If 10 people patrolled together, they wouldn't be able to take care of the entire area. Cui Hongshan complained about Quan Jinshan's irresponsible arrangement, and divided the 10 people into 5 groups. 2 people in a group and divided the area they would be patrolling. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but Ming Mao and Xiaohua were in the same group. Xiaohua didn't care, but Du Ailing, who was in the same group as Jin Mingwei, was already pouting. Let's go! Cui Hongshan acted as if he didn't see it, and waved his hand. Today is our first shift. Let's first familiarize ourselves with the environment, and set an example for the others. After all, if we were rewarded the moment we arrived, the others will definitely be jealous. Yes, we understand. Jin Mingwei and the others nodded with a smile, but Xiaohua didn't care and secretly said, "He really is a fan of politics. This is also the quality of a cultivator aristocratic family." Everyone flew out of the quiet room, and Ming Mao and Xiaohua each showed their tokens and entered the cave that the Qi refinement disciples had dug out from. After flying for a while, they passed through several crisscrossing tunnels and gradually entered the depths of the jade mine. The 10 people of the Imperial Thunder Sect's first small team were divided into 5 groups and flew towards different tunnels. Junior brother Xiao. After flying for a while, seeing that Xiaohua didn't say anything and didn't make any arrangements, Ming Mao couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "How should we patrol? Should we follow the route or go against it? Or... it's so troublesome?" Xiaohua was stunned when he heard this. He didn't expect that there would be so many ways to patrol. He thought that he only needed to fly once. I'll teach junior brother Xiao that when doing something, there should be a plan. What to do first, and what to do afterwards, all of these must be thought out in advance," Ming Mao said with a smile. "Otherwise it'll be a mess. Junior brother Xiao wants to become the pillar of my Imperial Thunder sect in the future, so you'll definitely be in charge of a branch. It's better to nurture these abilities as early as possible. -8. Chapter 23-28. Don't. Xiaohua felt a headache as soon as he heard this. He was used to doing as he pleased. What planning? What controlling? How could it compare to freedom? Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "This little brother's brain is lazy. Let senior apprentice Sister Bright Eyes arrange everything. This little brother will just accompany you from behind." "Ha!" Bright Eyes chuckled and said, "Senior apprentice Brother Zhao's magic power is profound. These are all small details that you don't need to think about. In short, once senior apprentice brother has a status, there will definitely be people who will give you advice. Captain Cui mentioned that Lan Xian. She must be one of Senior Tu Hong's strategists." "What are strategists?" Xiaohua didn't understand. "For golden core stage cultivators like Senior Tu Hong, or even nascent soul stage cultivators, they only care about their cultivation base, and are too lazy to divert their attention to the affairs of Golden Spring Mountain. Therefore, there are some cultivators who are good at handling these affairs who come out to help and give advice to Senior Tu Hong. These are the so-called strategists," Bright Eyes patiently explained. "Oh, so that's how it is." Xiaohua nodded. He understood that there were some cultivators who didn't have much of a future in terms of cultivation, so they attached themselves to high-level cultivators in order to find a way to improve themselves. Thinking of this, Xiaohua inexplicably thought of the Immortal Beauty School. Senior apprentice brother Xiao is really smart. Just a hint and you understand. Bright Eyes smiled and flattered. Senior apprentice sister Bright Eyes, please don't praise me. This little brother will be your strategists. You should lead the way. Xiaohua smiled and stretched out his hand. Strategists? Bright Eyes was surprised at first. Then she covered her mouth and laughed. I didn't think that senior apprentice brother Xiao would be so humorous. I really didn't realize it before. As she spoke, Bright Eyes didn't hold back. She picked a tunnel entrance and flew in. Sweat, this Xiao wants to lead the way, but it's a pity that this Xiao always gets lost. It's better if I don't. Xiaohua looked at Bright Eyes' figure as she flew away. He smiled and thought to himself. Besides, walking at the back, isn't that bad? There was a saying in the secular world that said, men and women work together. These words were also applicable to the cultivators of the cultivation world. At least, that was what Ming Mao thought. She flew with Xiaohua for half a day, and it was extremely relaxing. Occasionally, she would even joke with Xiaohua, and the two of them chatted very harmoniously. However, the only thing that made Ming Mao unhappy was that all the topics were started by her. When she didn't speak, Xiaohua would just follow behind her without saying a word. I still have to work hard. Ming Mao inwardly encouraged herself. Xiaohua didn't know what Ming Mao was thinking. His mind wasn't on flirting at all. His mind was already on the Spirit Stone mine. The stone walls in this spirit stone mine were rather strange. They restricted spiritual sense and Buddhist sense, and they couldn't go very far. It seemed to be a natural restriction. Although Xiaohua tried his best to release his Buddhist sense, he could only see about 100 feet away. Therefore, although he and Ming Mao flew through a few tunnels and saw a few caves, they didn't discover anything. This caused Xiaohua to be displeased. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, "Senior Sister Bright Eyes, didn't you notice anything strange?" "Oh?" Hearing Xiaohua's sudden question, Ming Mao was secretly happy. She hurriedly asked, "Junior Brother Xiao, did you notice anything?" "Senior Sister Bright Eyes, don't you feel strange?" Xiaohua's eyes darted around as he looked at the spacious tunnel and said, "This is the interior of the Golden Spring Mountain's Spirit Stone Vein. It must be bustling with noise and excitement. Not to mention the disciples mining the spirit stones, there must be many disciples patrolling the area. Why haven't we seen any disciples of Jinquan Mountain after flying for so long?" This, Ming Mao didn't think so much. Her thoughts were the same as Xiaohua's, and they weren't on patrol. "I guess this isn't the center of the spirit stone mine." Ming Mao thought for a moment and said with a smile, "We are only here to help. Jinquan Mountain won't let us see the center of the spirit stone mine. It's good enough that they let us patrol without worry. They still want us to contribute to the defensive array, right? And Senior Sister Bright Eyes is right." Xiaohua nodded. "But I'm still worried. How about this? Senior Sister will patrol according to the plan that we discussed earlier. I'll go take a look, see if there's anything wrong." Saying that, Xiaohua's figure flashed and quickly rushed towards a cave on the left. His figure quickly disappeared into the cave. "Junior Brother Xiao!" Ming Mao was shocked. She stretched out her hand and shouted, "This is an important place of Jinquan Mountain. How can we—" But how could Xiaohua hear her words? He had already flown away. Why is this fellow so reckless? No wonder Captain Chui was dissatisfied with him, Ming Mao muttered. She looked at the place where Xiaohua disappeared with some reluctance. Then, she felt an ominous feeling in her heart. Could it be that he didn't want to stay with me? That's why he found an excuse to escape. My appearance isn't any worse than Shui Shui's. It's just that my master isn't as powerful as her master. My Duile Palace is just slightly worse than Sunlei Palace. No. I can't miss this good opportunity. Senior Sister Dui said it right. Opportunities are meant to be grasped by people. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an opportunity. In any case, Shui and he haven't undergone the dual cultivation ceremony yet. I still have a chance. And, even if they dual cultivate, what can they do? For a cultivator with an outstanding cultivation like Xiaohua, what's so strange about having a few more dual cultivation partners? If I don't take advantage of the fact that Xiaohua hasn't revealed his strength, I won't be able to regret it in the future when Xiaohua is targeted by many female cultivators. Thinking about how domineering Heavenly Thunder Palace is, no matter how shy this fellow is, I will still capture him. Xiaohua didn't expect that he had already become Ming Mao's target. After he flew into the cave, he first used his divine sense to make a mark on the side. Then, he immediately put on his camouflage robe and used a concealment technique. He followed the cave and flew underground. However, after flying for nearly the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua arrived at an even more remote place. He saw that this place was very messy. The ground was filled with stone fragments of various sizes. Occasionally, there were small pieces of spirit stone fragments on top of the stone fragments. Haha, I'm afraid I'm close to the spirit stone mine. Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He didn't have time to think about why this place wasn't cleaned up. His gaze swept across the place, and he flew towards an opening at the end of the cave. There wasn't anyone guarding that opening. When Xiaohua flew into the cave, he couldn't help but be shocked. He saw that this was a square space that was 100 zhang long and several tens of zhang deep. The cave entrance was right above this space. This space was completely empty. There was nothing inside. Woo! Xiao Hua was very bored. He let out a soft sigh. That woo-woo sound reverberated in the entire space. It was as if Xiao Hua was sobbing in his heart. Damn it! Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over and he cursed. This is definitely an abandoned mind that has already been mined. Without waiting for this sound to finish reverberating in the space, Xiao Hua immediately turned around and went back to search again. However, Xiao Hua's luck didn't seem to be good today. It wasn't suitable for him to make a fortune. He searched for a while more. When Ming Mao's patrol was about done, he had no choice but to go back. He found 2 more empty and abandoned mining sites. Are you kidding me? Xiao Hua was depressed. When had great Taoist Xiao, who was known as thieves don't leave empty-handed, ever been humiliated like this? No. Xiao Hua thought. Today is my first patrol. Quan Jinshan might not care. Furthermore, there might be disciples from other sects who have the same plan as this young master. Their cultivation is not good enough. They might be discovered by Tu Hong. This way, there might not be any opportunities in the future. Today, this young master must get to the bottom of this. That's right. In the entire Quan Jishan, the one with the highest cultivation was Tu Hong, an early-stage golden core cultivator. This kind of cultivator, in Xiao Hua's eyes, had no pressure at all. Wasn't the entire Quan Jinshan waiting for Xiao Hua to bring disaster to it? Thinking, Xiao Hua formed a hand seal and entered the ground. He opened his left hand and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. He carefully searched for the location of the spirit stone mine. It was a pity. Although the Dharma eye was powerful, Xiao Hua couldn't see far. It was no different from his divine sense. Just as Xiao Hua was about to close his transcendence eye, a dozen or so huge earthen yellow pillars suddenly appeared several feet in front of him. Good. Xiao Hua's eyes widened in an instant. His magic power surged as he dashed forward. There are people here. Just as Xiao Hua's figure appeared in a huge space, he was stunned. He saw that this space was actually densely packed with cultivators. And these cultivators were all sitting cross-legged in groups of 3 to 5, surrounding these huge pillars. There was even a faintly discernible gaze that unconsciously swept past the place he appeared. This is bad. Xiao Hua hurriedly dodged and used the trace concealment technique again. There's someone! Sure enough, the gaze that saw Xiao Hua unconsciously swept past Xiao Hua's body and was immediately stunned. He shouted and his gaze returned to the place where Xiao Hua disappeared. At the same time, he jumped up. Who? Hearing the strange movement of that cultivator, the nearby cultivators all opened their eyes and looked towards the sky. Beside the cultivator, a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator also jumped up and swept his divine sense over there. However, Xiao Hua disappeared without a trace. It was as if he had never appeared. The cultivator's divine sense swept for a moment, but did not find any trace of him. Su Hu, what did you see? That cultivator frowned and glared at the cultivator who jumped up first and asked. This subordinate seems to have seen a figure appear. Su Hu gritted his teeth. He himself was also not sure. You saw it? That cultivator looked up and down, half believing and half doubting. What did he look like? What was he wearing? This? Su Hu smiled bitterly. He originally saw it unconsciously, and Xiao Hua disappeared in an instant. How could he remember clearly? After thinking for a moment, he shook his head and said, This subordinate could not see clearly. Humph, that cultivator said coldly. That means you are not sure? Also, you did not carefully comprehend the details of the array. Instead, you were casually looking around? Captain? Su Hu hurriedly said. It's not that this subordinate did not want to comprehend it. It's just that the details of this array are too profound. This subordinate was worried that I would delay the great general's plan. This subordinate opened his eyes and wanted to relax. However, this subordinate really did not dare to lie. I heard that in these few days, the disciples of the various sects of the Tao sect have come to my Golden Spring Mountain. If someone were to find this place. -8 Chapter 23-29. Shut up! The team leader berates. You only need to comprehend your own technique. Where are the other matters for you to worry about? Yes, this subordinate understands. Su Hu is still unwilling to give up. He looks over and uses his spirit sense to scan the area. There really isn't a single trace of magic power, nor is there any trace of him. You go sit down and continue comprehending. The team leader looks around and berates. All of you hurry up and work hard. The general said that after the Dao sect cultivators come, we won't be able to stay peaceful for long. We must familiarize ourselves with the array before the sword cultivators come. This matter is crucial. Whoever dares to delay the general's plan, even if I don't say it, all of you should know the consequences, right? Yes, this subordinate understands. When everyone hears, they don't dare to look anymore. Even the disciple who opened his eyes earlier hurriedly sits down and closes his eyes to comprehend. The team leader waves his hand and directs a dozen disciples who are also in the middle stage of foundation establishment to fly into the air and surround Xiaohua's hiding spot. Unfortunately, Xiaohua has already flown away. How can they find him? Following which, the dozen disciples searched the entire space once again but still couldn't find any trace of him. They can't help but hesitate. A cultivator says worriedly, Team leader, this matter is a little difficult. If we report this to the general, he will definitely be furious. We actually allowed the Dao sect cultivators to find this place. But if we don't report this and there really is such a person here, I'm afraid it will cause trouble. And actually, from what this old man sees, there isn't anyone here. The team leader thinks for a moment and smiles. The ordinary invisibility talisman can't use magic power. If someone is flying in the air, he will definitely reveal himself. Furthermore, this place is within the mine, even the 5 elements escape technique can't penetrate deep. Team leader means? We don't need to report? Of course we need to report. The team leader smiles. If we don't report, how will the general know of our hard work? How will he know that our vigilance is high? Yes, this subordinate understands. The disciple suddenly realizes. This subordinate will go over now. You stay here and comprehend. This old man will personally go over. Yes. The disciple's eyes reveal a trace of disappointment. He follows the other dozen people to their seats and sits down while the team leader flies out. After Xiaohua concealed his tracks, he directly walked over the heads of these Jinquan Mountain disciples. These middle-stage foundation establishment disciples didn't notice at all. I'm overjoyed. Xiaohua was still remorseful as he flew. Needless to say, this must be the top-grade spirit stone crystal pillar that Jinminghui was talking about. That Golden Spring Mountain disciple was right. Other than the array formation in the guest hall, there should be 9 more in the other places. This is one of them. I was wondering where all the patrolling disciples of Golden Spring Mountain had gone to. So they were all hiding within the array. And Tu Hong's plan is really well thought out. He wants the disciples of Jin Shan Quan to control the main part of the array and the Dao sect disciples to control the unimportant parts. He wants my Dao sect disciples to work for him. That's why I'm looking for spirit stone veins. I can't waste my magic power for nothing. Xiaohua knew that the disciples in the formation would definitely search for it, and they would definitely report it to Tu Hong. Therefore, he didn't dare to be negligent, and continued to search along the tunnel. When he found an abandoned mine next to the array formation, Xiaohua scratched his head. Fuck, are you kidding me? Don't tell me that all the spirit stone veins in Jinshan Quan Mountain have already been emptied by Sky Patrol City? Why didn't they leave anything for me? Following which, Xiaohua turned around hatefully and was about to escape back. But just as he turned around, Xiaohua still wasn't satisfied. With a wave of his hand, he took out the spirit-seeking mouse and scolded. Little Silver, your mother isn't here. I'm your mother's mother, why can't you understand what I'm saying? Quickly go and find the spirit stone veins, otherwise I won't let you eat any more spirit herbs. Then, Xiaohua glared fiercely at Little Silver, not caring whether it understood or not. It was strange. At this moment, Little Silver was different from Imperial Thundersek's Myriad Thunder Valley's Little Silver. As soon as this guy was released from the space, it immediately raised its nose and sniffed around. After a while, its eyes immediately lit up, and just like the crystal pillar of the supreme grade spirit stone that Xiaohua had seen earlier, it burrowed into the ground beside Xiaohua. Ha ha! Xiaohua was overjoyed. Without saying a word, he made a hand seal and followed it. The spirit-seeking mouse was indeed a spirit-seeking mouse. It was completely different from Xiaohua's blindness. It had a purpose. It directly burrowed into the ground without any hesitation. Xiaohua used Earth Escape to follow it. He clearly felt that the pressure underground was different from before. Not only was there an extremely heavy force pressing down on his head, faintly imprisoning all the vital essence in his body, but there was also a strong force pushing him out. Moreover, this layer of soil was extremely fine, and it was very difficult to escape through the ground. He had to consume a lot of vital essence for every foot he traveled. Fortunately, Xiaohua's vital essence was extremely strong, and he didn't show any signs of exhaustion even after diving down several hundred zhang with the spirit-seeking mouse. However, the force pushing him up was even stronger, and Xiaohua gradually found it a little strenuous. Moreover, a lot of time had passed, and Xiaohua was ready to beat a retreat. But just as Xiaohua was about to call out to the spirit-seeking mouse, his eyes instinctively lit up. The spirit-seeking mouse stopped and very happily pounced forward. My goodness, this is... Xiaohua also stopped, his eyes wide as he stared at the crystal that was several hundred zhang tall in front of him. He couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air, and some liquid flowed in his mouth. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and touched the ice-cold crystal. His divine sense swept over it, and he couldn't help groaning again. Damn it, I'm rich! This doesn't seem to be a supreme-grade spirit stone. This should be chalcedony. It's an extremely rare chalcedony found in spirit stone veins. Thinking this, Xiaohua no longer hesitated. He stretched out his hand and took out Qiu-Yin-Lu. Gathering all the strength in his body, he stabbed at the chalcedony spike. With a muffled clang, the sharp demonic weapon, coupled with his incomparable strength, actually pierced a small part of Xiaohua's Qiu-Yin-Lu into the spike. I'm a little too excited. Xiaohua used all his strength to pry open the Qiu-Yin-Lu, but the chalcedony didn't budge at all. Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. As long as he used all his strength to pull the Qiu-Yin-Lu out, he would use less strength. Then, Xiaohua would pry left and right, prying out several pieces of chalcedony in succession. After putting the chalcedony into his space, Xiaohua didn't dare to stop. With a wave of his hand, he put Little Silver, who was pouncing on the chalcedony, into his space. Completely ignoring the hidden bitterness in Little Silver's eyes, he immediately rushed back to the surface. When Xiaohua returned to the tunnel following the divine sense mark, he saw a pair of anxious bright eyes looking around. -8. Chapter 2330. Oh? What's wrong? Xiaohua turned around the cave and asked with a smile. Xiaohua, where did you go? Seeing Xiaohua appear, Ming Mao was pleasantly surprised. She immediately pounced over, hurriedly and naturally holding Xiaohua's hand as she said anxiously. I didn't go anywhere. I'm just watching from the side. Xiaohua also pulled his hand out without leaving a trace and pointed behind him. Then, why did you take so long? Captain Chui's communication talisman has been here for a long time, urging us to hurry back. Ming Mao reproached, her voice seemed to be bitter. Moreover, your communication talisman can't be sent out, how can this concubine not be anxious? Oh? My communication talisman can't be sent out? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, but fortunately, the communication talisman can't be sent out, otherwise, if he was in the array, wouldn't he be exposed? That's right, where did you go? Ming Mao rebuked. Xiaohua shrugged and smiled. This little brother is indeed nearby. The reason why the communication talisman can't be sent out is because this is a spirit stone mine, right? What does this have to do with a spirit stone mine? Ming Mao asked curiously. Let's hurry up and leave. Xiaohua smiled and flew up. Didn't senior sister say that Cui Hongshan sent a communication talisman? Hee, Cui Hongshan is your senior brother, why are you still calling him that? Ming Mao asked with a smile. Xiaohua's brows twitched, but he didn't reply. Ming Mao blinked her eyes, knowing that Xiaohua wasn't willing to talk about it, so she didn't ask anymore. The two of them flew back from their patrol area. Just as they flew back to their resting area, they saw that in front of the quiet room, there were disciples from various sects standing there with displeasure on their faces. What took you so long? Cui Hongshan reproached again. Ming Mao hurriedly said, Captain Cui, this concubine received your communication talisman and hurried back. But because it was the first time I was on patrol, I flew slowly and just happened to be at the farthest place. Fortunately, Jin Shan Quan's disciples haven't come yet. Cui Hongshan muttered and didn't ask any more. What's going on? Ming Mao asked curiously. Junior brother Xiao and I were just patrolling the area. According to the disciple of Golden Spring Mountain, he vaguely mentioned that there seems to be a problem with one of the patrolling guards in Lian country. Cui Hongshan frowned slightly. Xiaohua rolled his eyes. The place he went to was really far away from the place where the Imperial Thunder sect was patrolling. As for where he went, he really didn't know. He didn't even know which sect helped him take the blame. However, with him, the main culprit, here, that sect would not suffer any losses. Sure enough, after another cup of tea's worth of time, Lan Xian personally arrived. As she looked at the many disciples gathered in front of the quiet room, Lan Xian smiled and cupped her hands across her chest. Fellow Taoists, I've disturbed you all. That was a false alarm. I'm really sorry. What's going on, fellow Taoist Lan? One of the captains asked in a displeased manner. It's nothing. Lan Qin didn't hide anything and said, I found traces of an enemy in one of the array cores of my Golden Spring Mountain array. But my Golden Spring Mountain disciples didn't find any sword cultivators that entered, so this old man thought that it might have been a fellow Taoist that came as reinforcements that mistakenly entered the array core. Of course, the fellow Taoists from Lian country's variant beast sect were also patrolling at that time. The disciples of the other nearby sects also didn't go to the array core. So this old man thought that my Golden Spring Mountain disciples had made a mistake. That disciple was severely punished just now. Oh, so that's how it is. The captain nodded. This matter is truly important. It's normal for fellow Taoist Lan to be cautious. If fellow Taoists can understand this old man's difficulties, then that is for the best. Lan Xian cupped her hands across her chest and said, Fellow Taoists, when patrolling, it is best that you follow the predetermined area and do not overstep it. Also, because my Golden Spring Mountain collects spirit stones, there are many underground caves that are similar to a maze. If some fellow Taoists are curious and go in the wrong direction, they really might not be able to return. Remember this, remember this. Then, Lan Xian bid everyone farewell and left. Cui Hongshan looked at Xiaohua and the others, but didn't say anything. In his heart, he faintly felt that there was something strange about Xiaohua and Ming Mao coming back so late, but he also didn't ask anything. In the next few days, although Xiaohua restrained himself a bit, he still found time to directly take Little Silver underground and crazily mine for jade marrow. It was just that this jade marrow was really hard. At first it was fine, but later Xiaohua directly took out the wishful iron rod and used it to cut off a small piece. Just as Xiaohua was overjoyed, in the vicinity of the Spirit Stone mine at Golden Spring Mountain, a dozen sword cultivators came. The sword cultivator in front of them was none other than Ling Yunwu of the High Wind Sword sect. Ling Yunwu's eyebrows were tightly furrowed. The flying sword under his feet slowly flew as he swept out with his divine sense, slowly searching. Poor Ling Yunwu. The first time he came to White Jade Mountain, he couldn't find any clues at all. When he came the second time, he relied on a secret technique to find some clues, and found the place where the dozens of bright sword swordsmen he trusted had been killed. Even if he found it, what was the use? Ling Yunwu still didn't have the slightest clue. This place is very far away from Sky Patrol City. Furthermore, it's barren. Which golden core cultivator would come here? Or hundreds of Foundation establishment cultivators? To completely surround my swordsman? The cultivators of Sky Patrol City were forced by LV Ruochang's plan to guard the Spirit Stone mine. Then there must be hundreds of Foundation establishment cultivators coming to reinforce White Jade Mountain. If they were just passing by, it's impossible for there to be hundreds of them. Only a few or a dozen. Only in the vicinity of White Jade Mountain can they gather together. But, where is this Spirit Stone mine? It's not like I haven't been here before, but I've never found any signs of a Spirit Stone mine. Ling Yunwu was really going crazy. He also had a mission to attack the Spirit Stone mine, but it wasn't near White Jade Mountain. Furthermore, compared with attacking the Spirit Stone mine, his mission was more important. That was Dark Silk Wood, which LV Ruochang had obtained by chance in Million Mountain Ming. Now that he needed it, where was he going to find another piece? Moreover, there was also the sword pouch, which was also a very precious thing. He had lost it just like that. He felt ashamed just thinking about it. He was really too careless. After flying for half a day, Ling Yunwu arrived at the mountain range of Springgold Mountain. Ling Yunwu sighed and landed on the mountain range. The disciples scattered around him also flew over. Everyone's face was full of embarrassment. Obviously, they didn't find anything. Senior Brother Ling. A disciple who was also an illusory sword cultivator said softly, "Those Foundation establishment cultivators. I'm afraid they've already returned to Sky Patrol City? The possibility of success is extremely small if we search inch by inch." Sigh, that's strange. Ling Yunwu sat on a huge rock in the mountain range and smiled bitterly. LV Ruochang sent a flying sword message saying that she couldn't find the sword pouch's trace even with her secret technique. That sword pouch was either imprisoned by a powerful magic power, or it was too far away from the sword region. Maybe. I've guessed wrong? Is there really a late-stage golden core or nascent soul cultivator? A nascent soul cultivator wouldn't attack a drawing sword disciple, right? At most, it would be a golden core cultivator. The disciple said softly. Sigh, maybe. Ling Yunwu didn't comment. The most important thing now is to find the black silk wood. Otherwise, the beast cultivator senior's life will be lost. I won't have the face to see anyone. I've been here before, but I haven't seen any spirit stone veins. The disciple looked at the endless pine trees and shook his head. We can't find it, but it doesn't mean it's not here. Maybe it's under the forest? Ling Yunwu snorted and waved his hand. The flying sword flew out like a raging fire. Boom, boom, boom. It destroyed all the trees in a radius of hundreds of feet under the mountain range. For a moment, flames soared into the sky. Looking at the crackling flames burning and slowly extinguishing, the charred trees fell to the snow-covered ground. A bitter smile appeared on the disciple's face. He bowed and said, "Why don't I bring the disciples to the forest to have a look?" Go. Ling Yunwu nodded. Find more places. Yes. The disciple accepted the order and left. Following which, boom, 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 sounds came from the forest. Trees began to fall to the ground. Sigh, it feels like searching for a needle in a haystack. Although the Ling Foam Sword Sect's disciples moved quickly, the area they searched was still pathetically small compared to the entire forest. Who knew how long it would take for them to search through the entire forest? Sigh. Ling Yunwu sighed softly again. He felt a faint sense of regret. He knew that everything had already happened and regret wouldn't solve anything. However, he couldn't help but think. Of course, this wouldn't have happened, right? After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Ling Yunwu seemed to have rested enough. He flew up and stepped on his flying sword. He charged into the sky and flew towards the other side of the Golden Spring Mountain. However, just as he flew for 100 feet, another sword light came from the northeast. This sword light was as blue as water and incomparably clear. Oh! When Ling Yunwu saw this sword light, a smile appeared on his face. He covered up all the dejection he felt earlier. With a push, the fiery red sword light under his feet flew forward to meet the incoming sword light. When the sword light flew closer, a beautiful middle-aged woman could be seen on the flying sword. She was dressed in the standard sword cultivator attire. She had big eyes, a towering chest and snow-white skin that was very eye-catching. "Husband!" the female swordsman shouted when she saw Ling Yunwu. "Oh? Wanner, why aren't you on duty in Sword's Gate? What are you doing here?" Ling Yunwu smiled and stretched out his hand as if he was going to catch the female swordsman. This female swordsman was Ling Yunwu's wife, Yuan. Yuan's face was full of smiles. Before she flew to Ling Yunwu's side, she couldn't wait to take out a sword scroll and shouted, "Husband, I have good news to tell you." -8. Chapter 23:31. "Oh? What good news?" Ling Yunwu raised his other hand and took the sword scroll that Yuan handed over. However, that hand held Yuan's soft hand. "Hee, husband will know once you take a look." Yuan was actually a little out of breath, and her face was even a little red. It was really a symptom of forcefully activating the sword origin and flying on the sword. Ling Yunwu's heart ached, but he was not in a hurry to check the sword scroll. He said with pity, "If there's any news, can't you just send a flying sword message? Why do you have to come here yourself? Not to mention the sword origin, this journey will not be safe. If we meet a cultivator from the Dao sect, your husband..." "Hee, husband! Just take a look first." Yuan did not wait for him to finish and laughed. "How can a flying sword message be safer and more convenient than me coming here myself? Besides, I'm also worried about you. If I don't come and see for myself, how can I be at ease?" Hearing Yuan's words, Ling Yunwu felt sweet in his heart. He released his spirit sense to check the sword scroll. "This is an image." Yuan smiled as she reminded him, but her eyes revealed a trace of mischief. "Hee, Wan'er, how old are you? You're still so naughty." Ling Yunwu smiled bitterly, and the gloominess in his heart faded a lot. When he activated the sword origin, he saw a blurry image appear from the sword scroll. It was a thin and tall Dao sect cultivator wearing the attire of the Imperial Thunder sect. He quickly flew over, and before he could see the cultivator's appearance clearly, the image turned black again. "This is..." A trace of surprise flashed across Ling Yunwu's eyes, and then he looked at Yuan in surprise. "This is the image left behind by Old Seven and the others?" "Yes, not all of them," Yuan said with a smile. "They were killed in a hurry, so how could they have the time to leave behind an image? This image was obtained by me, using a secret technique." "Wan'er!" Ling Yunwu's heart ached. He reached out and pulled Yuan into his embrace. He said in a low voice, "It's all my fault. My negligence not only affected my sword cultivation plan, but also caused your cultivation to be greatly damaged." "Hee, it's nothing." Yuan forced a smile like a blue flower and comforted Ling Yunwu. "To be able to do something for my husband, I'm willing to pay any price. And Wana is really my good wife." Ling Yunwu increased the strength in his hands, as if he wanted to embed Yuan into his body. Yuan gritted her teeth as if she was in pain, but she didn't say anything. The two of them hugged each other for a moment before Yuan said in a low voice, "Husband, we're already an old married couple. Don't be so intimate. If the disciples see this, I'm afraid it won't be good. You are my wife, who dares to say anything?" Ling Yunwu snorted, but looking at the sword cultivator disciples who were patrolling the forest at the top of Jinquan Mountain, he still loosened his grip and pulled her hand to fly towards those disciples. "Husband, this image, this concubine has also seen it." Yuan looked at Ling Yunwu and said worriedly, "This golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect is very powerful. What he used should be the Thunder Control sect's lightning evasion technique. According to the legends, this was the fastest flying technique in the Daybreak continent. My advantage as a sword cultivator was completely gone in front of him. Moreover, you also saw that when he dealt with Old Seven, he didn't use any spells at all and just used close combat. That's right, this husband also saw it. Ling Yunwu sighed. This Imperial Thunder Sect's cultivator's magic power is so much higher than Old Seven's that he's not afraid of his flying sword at all, or his close combat is even more powerful than us sword cultivators. And it should be the former. Yuan pursed her lips and nodded. Along the way, this concubine has also been thinking. There are not many people who are stronger than us sword cultivators in close combat. Since this Imperial Thunder Sect's cultivator has mastered the lightning evasion technique, he must be a golden core cultivator. The only explanation is that his magic power is profound. Following which, she looked at Ling Yunwu worriedly and said in a low voice, "It's not that this concubine is looking up to him, but the Imperial Thunder Sect's flying technique is the nemesis of us sword cultivators." Suddenly, this golden core cultivator got close to us. "Husband, you have to be careful." "Humph, my wife is thinking too much," Ling Yunwu said proudly. "Even if it's a golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder Sect, how can this husband be afraid of him? Although he can fly faster than this husband, once he gets close to us, how can he be a match for this husband? You have to know the difference between a bright sword swordsman and an illusory sword swordsman." Hearing Ling Yunwu's words, as expected, Yuan sighed in her heart. However, she smiled and said, "This concubine naturally knows. This concubine's husband is a strange man in the sword domain. How can a small golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder Sect be compared to him? You have a sweet mouth." Ling Yunwu's heart skipped a beat. He stretched out his finger and gently stroked Yuan's face. He smiled and said, "This husband understands your thoughts. This husband will definitely be careful when he sees this guy." Yuan sweetly rubbed her face against Ling Yunwu's hand. She was very attached to it. However, at this moment, the two of them had already flown close to the forest of Mount Quanjing. "All of you stop." Ling Yunwu looked at the destroyed trees under his feet and shouted, "Our expectations might be wrong." "Yes." When the sword cultivator disciples heard this, they hurriedly flew into the air. After greeting Yuan, Ling Yunwu showed them the image in the sword scroll and said, "I reckon that the one who killed our soaring windsword sect is a golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder Sect? If I'm not wrong, he should be passing by here and heading to Sky Patrol City. He won't stop here. We have to think of another way. Imperial Thunder Sect cultivator? Tall and thin figure?" A soaring windsword sect's bright sword sect disciple suddenly lost his voice and said, "Marshal Uncle Ling, this can't be the Imperial Thunder Sect cultivator called Terrifying Phoenix, right? Terrifying Phoenix?" Yuan frowned and whispered, "What kind of cultivator is that? Could it be related to this golden core cultivator?" No, Ling Yunwu stared at that disciple and hurriedly laughed. "That's just a Foundation establishment disciple with the Phoenix bloodline. He's not the same person as this golden core cultivator. This concubine knows." Yuan smiled and said, "This concubine just doesn't know what's going on with this terrifying Phoenix. This person has nothing to do with us. My wife, you don't have to care about who he is," Ling Yunwu said with a smile. "My wife has already sent the sword slip over. It's better to go back as soon as possible. Dao sect cultivators can appear at any time. It's quite dangerous." Then he turned and ordered, "Yunfei, send your senior sister back." "Yes, senior brother Ling." The swordsman, who was also an illusory sword cultivator, cupped his hands and answered, "Husband, you have to be careful." Yuan was very obedient. She didn't ask who the Phoenix man was anymore and said, "Why don't you ask fifth senior brother and the others to come over and help you?" Ling Yunwu originally wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "That's good too. Yunfei, go back to the sword sect and tell the sword master about this. Or ask the senior brothers in the sect to help, or ask other sword friends who are close to you. In short, find about 10 illusory swordsmen. Only with so many sword friends working together will this golden core cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect not be able to escape." -8. Chapter 2332. Yuan was overjoyed when she saw that Ling Yunwu had listened to her suggestion. She reluctantly parted with Ling Yunwu, and a blue flying sword appeared under her feet and flew into the distance. Don't ever mention the horrifying phoenix again! After Yuan flew far away, Ling Yunwu coldly glared at the disciple and said, Fortunately, this is your martial uncle. If it was someone else who wanted to get to the bottom of the matter, how would you answer? Do you want thousands of swordsmen to suffer the wrath of Senior Huajian? Yes, I know my mistake. The disciple who drew the sword immediately understood the crux of the matter, and hurriedly replied with a bow. However, what you said is not without reason. Ling Yunwu squinted his eyes and looked in the direction of Sky Patrol City. Although the possibility is very small, if it's true, then the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect are really interesting. Let's go! Ling Yunwu thought for a while and waved his hand. He led the disciples across the mountain range of Golden Spring Mountain and flew in the direction of Sky Patrol City. However, they had just flown for a few miles when they were greeted by a dozen bird cultivators. Each bird cultivator was dragging a small dwarf on their back. Ling Yunwu did not dare to delay. He stopped in midair and cupped his hands. Ling Yunwu of the Soaring Wind Sword Sect greets sword friend Feiyu. The bird cultivators stopped in midair. The one in front flapped his wings and glanced sharply at Ling Yunwu. He said coldly, Soaring Wind Sword Sect? Your attack area doesn't seem to be here, right? Hee sword friend Feiyu, I'll let you know that I've lost something, and I need to find it nearby. What is it? It's not a good thing to let you know about it, Ling Yunwu said with a smile. Senior Qi and the others should know about it. Yes. The bird cultivator nodded slightly. I'm Ming Chao of the Quilted Mountain Sect. I'm looking for a cultivator here. Can I help you? Oh? Are there any cultivators from the Taoist sect hiding here? Ling Yunwu asked curiously. I've been searching here for several days, but I didn't find any clues. This old man flew past this place earlier, but I don't know any Dao sect cultivators. Ing Chao nodded and said, But a few days ago, not far from here, my Flying Feather sect's fellow disciples and the giants encountered dozens of Dao sect's Foundation establishment cultivators in a row. Just as they were about to kill these cultivators, the giants sent over another dozen cultivators. One of the tall and thin Foundation establishment cultivators killed 3 of my Flying Feather sect's fellow disciples and even scared the giants away. Ah, he scared the giant away? Ling Yunwu asked curiously. Is this Foundation establishment cultivator very powerful? What fellow Taoist Ling doesn't know is that the cultivator used a long staff to bend a giant's mace and send the giant into the ground. His strength is frightening. The giants tremble with fear and don't dare to continue fighting. A strange expression appeared on Ing Chao's face. Hiss! Ling Yunwu sucked in a breath of cold air. Suddenly, he realized something and hurriedly said, A tall and thin cultivator? Are you a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect? This old man doesn't know. Ing Chao shook his head slightly, then turned his head and asked, Do you know? The closest bird cultivator was the one who was chased away by Xiaohua. He also shook his head and said, This subordinate can't tell if he's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Ling Yunwu thought for a moment, then took out the sword slip and played the image. It's him. Although the bird cultivator couldn't see Xiaohua's appearance, Xiaohua's ghost-like flying speed, his tall and thin figure, and the Imperial Thunder sect's Taoist robe frightened the bird cultivator. His wings trembled nonstop, and the dwarf on his back almost fell from the sky. Idiot! Ing Chao cursed, then looked at Ling Yunwu and asked, Fellow Taoist Ling is also looking for this person. That's right. Ling Yunwu clenched his teeth. It's him. It seems that I didn't find the wrong person this time. Good, since that's the case. Ing Chao nodded and said, Then this old man will lend you a hand. Fellow Taoist Feiyu knows where this person is? Ling Yunwu couldn't believe it. Hee. Ing Chao shook his wings and said with a smile, Although this old man doesn't know, the little friend on my back knows. Fellow Taoist Unicave knows? Ling Yunwu was puzzled and looked at the dwarf on Ing Chao's back. That's right, this old man knows. The dwarf proudly raised his neck and explained what he found, then added, This old man and the others found traces of Taoist sect cultivators here, so they shouldn't be far from here. Good! Ling Yunwu was so excited that he wanted to clap his hands. This Ling thanks fellow Taoist Uni Cave. Haha, you're welcome, you're welcome. The dwarf was very happy, and his facial features were squeezed together, as if being recognized by an illusory sword sect cultivator was an extremely amazing thing. This old man and the others are just scouts. Ing Chao smiled coldly and said, If this old man's guess is correct, this should be a secret place for Taoist sect cultivators, and it should be the spirit stone vein we're looking for. Behind this old man, there are thousands of sword cultivators waiting. As long as we confirm it, they will immediately come. At that time, not only will we be able to find fellow Taoist Ling's things, we can even divide the large amount of spirit stones. Good! That's exactly what I want! Ling Yunwu laughed and said. Then what are we hesitating for? Let's go! Good! Straight forward! Ing Chao shook his wings, and a trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. His body flew up again, and he carried the dwarf and flew towards the mountain range of Quanjin Mountain. At this time, there was already some snow on Quanjin Mountain, and palm-sized snowflakes fell from the clouds. Moreover, the thick layers of clouds were stacked in the air above Quanjin Mountain, as if a waterfall was pouring down from the sky, and it was even more spectacular. Jie! Ing Chao cried out a few times. More than 10 bird cultivators rushed up the tall Golden Spring Mountain range. They ascended in a straight line and gradually approached the cumulus clouds. Whoop! An intense wind whistling sound was emitted from Ing Chao's body. Following which, more than 10 bird cultivators actually crashed into the clouds. In an instant, more than 10 huge holes were opened up in the dark clouds. The dark clouds sprinkled on their bodies, and their feathers were blown up one by one. The dwarves on their backs were already frightened out of their wits, and each of them hugged onto the backs of the bird cultivators, and shrunk their heads deep into their chests, not even daring to look. Looking at their situation, compared to the high spirits of the bird cultivators, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Ling Yunwu naturally would not follow the bird cultivators into the clouds, and he did not understand the actions of these bird cultivators. Just as he was frowning slightly, Jie, more than 10 sounds rang out, and more than 10 bird cultivators once again flew out from the clouds, and separately flew towards the surroundings of Quanjin Mountain. What are these bird cultivators trying to do? A disciple saw Ling Yunwu frowning, and also said in agreement, Who doesn't know that they are flying high? I'm afraid they want to see the size of Quanjin Mountain. Assign the scouting positions, Ling Yunwu said indifferently. Let's go, I want to see where Ing Chao is. Ing Chao, with the dwarf on his back, landed in the air several hundred feet away from Ling Yunwu, and still maintained that kind of extreme speed. The dwarf on his back really could not bear this kind of stimulation, and shouted out loudly. With a loud bang, Ing Chao's wings suddenly spread open, and his whole body immediately became as stable as a falling leaf, slowly floating towards the northeast corner of Quanjin Mountain. When he was only several feet away from the forest of Quanjin Mountain, the dwarf let go of his hand, and jumped down from Ing Chao's back. It was obvious that the dwarf's legs were somewhat trembling. When the dwarf landed in the forest, he heard a burst of crackling sounds, and the dwarf in Ling Yunwu's eyes suddenly disappeared. Oh, this dwarf knows the 5 elements escape technique! Ling Yunwu suddenly understood why Ing Chao and the other bird cultivators brought the dwarf over. Just now, the dwarf only said that he found the traces of Xiaohua and the others, and did not say that he used the earth derivation technique to avoid Xiaohua's divine sense, so Ling Yunwu was shocked. Flying in front of Ing Chao, Ling Yunwu cupped his hands and said, Sword friend Ing Chao, this dwarf actually knows the 5 elements escape technique? It is this Ling who is ignorant and inexperienced. Humph, it's nothing but a thing that hides underground all day long, not daring to see people. At this time, Ing Chao had already returned to his human form. He was a swordsman with a thin figure and sallow skin. His two slender eyes flashed with arrogance from time to time. If I did not ask them to help find the traces of cultivators, how could this old man let them sit on my back? Oh! Ling Yunwu suddenly understood why the bird cultivators rushed into the sky just now. This Ling also knows some things about the sword domain since childhood, and now I have cultivated to the illusory sword, but this mysterious dwarf, and also this giant, I still do not know much. I wonder if sword friend Feiyu can enlighten me? Ling Yunwu cupped his hands and asked very modestly. Don't ask me, this old man also does not know. Ing Chao waved his hand disdainfully. It's nothing more than digging holes in the ground, what do you know about them? Then he looked at Ling Yunwu and said with a serious expression. It's not that this old man doesn't want to say, this old man really does not know. If Senior Qi did not call them out, he must know that there are such strange people in my sword domain. Oh, Ling Yunwu was quite disappointed. He looked at the ground and said, The dwarf's 5 elements escape technique is similar to the Taoist sect's magic star. It should be different. Ing Chao shook his head and said, This is the dwarf's earth amplification technique. It is said that the dwarf was born with a remarkable ability. It is similar to the giant's infinite strength. However, the dwarf is really too timid, so it is not good to show. Perhaps. Ling Yunwu's eyes did not leave the forest, as if he wanted to see the dwarf's trace. Ing Chao did not speak, and his figure stood there straight. From afar, he looked very proud and aloof. The dwarf had long been frightened out of his wits. When he swore that he would never sit on the bird cultivator's back again, he saw that the distance to the ground was not high, so he immediately jumped down from Ing Chao's back. Although his figure was small, he still crashed into a tree, and even broke a branch. After the dwarf landed on the ground, he did not escape into the depths but instead hid under the soil layer. He let out a long sigh and stayed in a daze for as long as a meal. Only then did his figure sway and escape into the depths of Golden Spring Mountain. -8. Chapter 23:33. As the dwarf moved downwards, his nose twitched. Sometimes he would move left, sometimes he would move right, sometimes he would dive down, sometimes he would move up, as if there really was a path beneath the earth. The dwarf's earth amplification technique was different from Xiaohua's earth escape technique. There wasn't any brilliance protecting the dwarf's body. As long as the dwarf moved his hands and feet, his body would move. Everything was the same as a mortal walking on the ground. However, after the dwarf stealthily moved for a long time, his body began to slow down. The dwarf's face wasn't alarmed, but rather happy. This proved that the earth here was different from other places, and this was exactly what he was looking for. Sure enough, after another hour, the earth beneath his feet became incomparably hard. The dwarf was no longer able to move even half a step forward. The dwarf looked left and right. Then, he followed the hard earth towards the Golden Spring Mountain Range. And within the Golden Spring Mountain Range, in a secluded area within a palace-like cave, Tu Hong and Lan Xian were sitting on 2 chairs with expressionless faces. In front of the chairs was a square mirror that was 10 feet wide, and the mirror was covered in an earthy yellow color. And in this earthy yellow haze there was a dark red thread that was like a blood-red thread that was extremely obvious on the lower half of the mirror. Not too far away from this blood-red thread, there were dozens of pitch-black dots that were slowly moving towards it. Great General! Seeing the dots come closer and closer, Lan Xian couldn't help but be moved. She whispered, This sword cultivator, where did he find such a master? There are actually dozens of them. They actually know the 5-element escape technique. However, Tu Hong didn't seem to hear her. His face was indifferent as he coldly watched those black dots approach the blood-red thread. Seeing Tu Hong not respond, Lan Xian first stopped talking. But after another cup of tea's worth of cultivation, she couldn't help but remind him again. Great General! They are getting closer and closer. I fear they will discover the spells of my Golden Spring Mountain Range. Old brother Lan! Tu Hong looked up and sighed. I have reminded you more than once that the path of a general is to first control your heart. Even if a spiritual mountain collapses in front of you, your complexion won't change. Even if an elk rises to the left, your eyes won't blink. Then, you will be able to control the situation and deal with the enemy. If you can't even handle the tricks of a dozen ghastly clowns, how can you improve your cultivation? Alas, great general! That's easy to say, but difficult to do. Lon Xian sighed. This old woman also knows that there is nothing to fear from these dozens of clowns. But what about behind them? That was over 1,000 sword cultivators. Even if my Golden Spring Mountain disciples are not afraid of them, wouldn't my Golden Spring Mountain spirit stone mine be exposed? The great general's foundation was gone soon. Without Quan Jinshan, the great general's position in Sky Patrol City is also in jeopardy. And elder brother Lon was worried about this too, but this too mocked elder brother instead. This too is really unbearable. Tu Hong's expression slightly changed. He stood up and cupped his hands. This too apologizes to elder brother. Hee, it's nothing. Lon Xian hurriedly blocked Tu Hong. She smiled and said, This old woman also wants to borrow the strength of the great general to cultivate to the Golden Core realm. This is also for my own sake. Hee, old brother Lon, this too knows what you're thinking. Tu Hong took advantage of the situation to sit down. He pointed his finger and said, Actually, what elder brother is thinking is that Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone Mine will be discovered by the sword cultivators. You even vaguely mentioned before that the arrival of the disciples from the 3 countries would attract the attention of the sword cultivators and bring a devastating disaster to my Golden Spring Mountain. That's right, this old man did say that. Lon Xian nodded without concealing anything. The Dusk Mansion's conference hall is simply a high and mighty place. They blindly give orders. If they didn't send any disciples here, my Golden Spring Mountain would have concealed it well. Even after 1,000 years, we wouldn't have to worry about being discovered by the sword cultivators. But now, how many days has it been since their reinforcements arrived? The sword cultivators have already chased after us. Tu Hong nodded. He didn't comment. Instead, he asked, Did you find that disciple that randomly broke into the Spirit Stone Mine? No. There wasn't any trace of him. Lon Xian found it strange that Tu Hong would suddenly ask this. She shook her head and said, Also, I didn't see any changes in Golden Spring Mountain spells. I'm afraid that disciple was mistaken. What kind of rumors can there be among the disciples of the 3 countries? Tu Hong suddenly asked. Rumors? Lon Xian was puzzled. She blankly said, No. I didn't hear any rumors. That's good. Tu Hong nodded, a relieved look on his face. He said, My Golden Spring Mountain's array formation is very tight. Since no outsiders have infiltrated, then that means that the unknown figure is a cultivator from within my Golden Spring Mountain. Of course, this is only a guess. Perhaps there isn't. Moreover, there aren't any rumors right now. The sword cultivator's attack is imminent, so who cares if there isn't? Yes. Lon Xian still couldn't make sense of this, so she could only nod. There are many things that I don't want old brother Lon to know. As Tu Hong saw this, he mysteriously smiled and said, As long as I pass through this great sword battle at Golden Spring Mountain, whether or not Golden Spring Mountain is exposed, it will be harmless to me. The Lord City Lord of Sky Patrol City, he will definitely reward me. Ah? Lon Xian was stunned. Then, as if she thought of something, she raised her eyebrows and said, So, sure. Tu Hong raised his index finger and placed it on his lips. He smiled and said, There are some things that cannot be said. Who knows if there is another cultivator that we cannot detect next to this cave? Let's wait for this matter to end. Oh, look, the sword cultivators are approaching the barrier. As he said this, Tu Hong pointed his finger at the 4 sides of the mirror. Sure enough, dozens of small dots were approaching the blood threads from all directions. However, just as these small dots were about to approach the blood threads, they all stopped there. Then, they were like ants on a hot pan. After circling around for a moment, They scattered and started to swim around the blood threads. Lan Xian's face showed a trace of relief. But Tu Hong frowned. After a moment, he whispered, "The earth layer of this spirit stone mine is very solid. It is what my Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array formation relies on, but it is also a place that is easily discovered. Although these sword cultivators cannot go deep into the earth layer, they should already know that there is something strange below." Then Tu Hong looked up and said, "Old brother Lan, go and inform the disciples of the Dawn Array to kill the sword cultivators near them." "Ah?" Lan Xian hesitated for a moment, then cupped her hands and said, "This old woman will go now." Not long after Lan Xian walked out, she saw that there weren't any superfluous images on the mirror. Instead, the 3 small dots that were cruising above the blood-red lines suddenly began to accelerate, as if they had been frightened and began to flee in all directions. "Huh!" Seeing the 3 small dots getting further and further away from the blood threads, Tu Hong was a little surprised, and his face gradually became dignified. When the small dots broke away from the yellow mirror, Tu Hong clapped his hands again, and a misty brilliance emitted from his hands, covering the 4 sides of the mirror. The mirror began to shrink, and when it had shrunk to the size of a foot, Tu Hong clenched his hand, and a yellow light appeared between his fingers. He tightly grasped the mirror, and as the yellow light lingered, the mirror transformed into the shape of a 3 rhombus. -8. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.